And the threads of that tapestry were created and put into needles many, many years ago. Many, many years ago. And what is of particular significance is not so much that the Baptist Missionary and Educational Convention, which is the governing body of the Baptist Communion that has already corporation souls within itself, like the St. John's, particular Native Baptist, of the Zion Baptist. They're all already corporation souls. But more significantly, it is how the Baptist movement or the Baptist Communion came to be realized in the Bahamas. And its rich history in being in the forefront of the battle for freedoms that we now enjoy, and not just recently. The recent involvement in the struggle were amply expounded upon by the member for Marco City when he spoke about their involvement in the Burma Road, the taxi union strike, the master majority rule, how churches were closed on Sunday so that the preachers could go on the recreation ground with their booming voices to preach for majority rule, and how the song "All the Way," my Jesus will lead me, led us through that fiery furnace that break down the walls of the white oligarchy that was, as it were, strangling us at the time. I think, the Baptist movement originated from two respects. You had Prince William, and you would have heard much about him. But I think it's very important that we appreciate who Prince William truly was. He had a remarkable story. And he would not share the view that he was a slave. He would not share that view. He would not share that view. The authorities of the day sought to deem him a slave, but he challenged them characterizing him as a slave in the Negro court that was set up back in those days. And the records are still there. They're not kept here as much as they ought to, but if you go into the archives, the Court of Records in England, they still have a lot of our records right here. You'll find it all right there. He will tell you that he was born in 1763 in colonial Georgia as a free man. Later on in life, when he's in his teens, he was captured and sold into slavery. That's what he'll tell you. This is in his own writing as well. He'll also tell you that when the British Army came to Georgia, he took advantage of the confusion of the American Revolution and he sided with the British. He escaped and went and fought with the British Army. In fact, he served for 6 years in a regiment they called the 60th Regiment in Savannah, under the command of a General Prevost. All that is, this is his word. This is the judgment. And so he then became, like most of the white loyalists who were pledging their allegiance to the crown, he, having fought in the army and sided in the revolution with the British, he became a black loyalist. Now, many of us don't talk about black loyalists. We only hear about the white loyalists. But there were black loyalists who came to the Bahamas, some of whom had slaves too. Right? So, but Prince William, he was settled with amongst the white loyalists, and most of them went to St. Augustine, Florida. So after the war, Civil War, that's where they went. And then he left there, and I must say that his teachings, his becoming a preacher, a Baptist preacher, was inspired by another black, what they call in those days, separate preachers. They call it the Black Separate Baptists, distinguishing themselves from the British, the Baptist Missionary Society, which was in London. This was when they were in Savannah, and coming from the regiments, the soldiers who were practicing Baptists. And there was the leader of that group was a black preacher by the name of George Lee Ellie. And another one was Amos Williams, who also eventually came to the Bahamas. Now, Prince William was taught learned his preaching through George Lee Ellie. Amos Williams was there too. Now, he came to the Bahamas in the 1780s. From St. Augustine. What's interesting, the boat he came on had another black preacher whose name was Shaffer Morris. Now, it's an interesting story about Shaffer Morris that continues in the whole history of the development of the Baptist movement. Okay. I'll mention him again. Now, again, as a black loyalist, with several other black loyalists coming to the Bahamas, to New Providence, when he landed, there was this note in there's a document, I call it the Gazette, out of Savannah, Georgia, where he was deemed a runaway slave. Right? Because he was born free. He escaped and joined the British Army, fought with the British Army, became a loyalist, was evacuated from Savannah, settled in St. Augustine with a lot of other black loyalists and the white loyalists. And eventually he made his way to the Bahamas in the 1780s. So when he came here, some of the loyalists here then said, listen, I saw a note where you are a slave. And they sought to enslave him. So for the second time now, he had to fight for his freedom, to say, look, I'm free. I'm not a slave. Yeah. And what he did, he petitioned the government. Again, the petition is amongst the records, the British records. He petitioned the government And then they say, well, you have to go to court. And they had, in those days, they had the Negro court. You have to give your evidence to say why you're not a slave. He did that. And eventually, they declared, yes, you're right. You were not a slave, and you're a free man. So those are some of the things he went through. And, his life wasn't easy. Because you had the Amos Williams, who I spoke of, who was like the co-pastor with George Leal, who were the leading Baptist preachers and teachers in Savannah at the time. He came to the Bahamas as well, later on. And it was Amos Williams, Sambo Scriven, another black royalist who came to the Bahamas, who established the Bethel Baptist Church. Very often, we forget, or it's not mentioned often enough, that you had the Amos Williams and you had the Sambo Scriven. And in fact, Prince William will say, and you'll find it in his writings, that the principal preacher, or the preacher in charge of Bethel when it was established, was not him. He never really became in charge of Bethel Baptist. Never. It was Sambo Scriven who was always the preacher in charge. And he was the assistant too. Sambo Scriven. Again, you'll find that in his writings. The reason why I think Prince William is lifted up is because all of these men has a story of freedom and resistance. But Prince William's life was lifted up. He never became the pastor, as it were, of Bethel Baptist because, as it was then, it is today. You always have these strikes. You had the elders in the church. Prince William decided he'd get married. He got married to a lady, I think her name was Peggy Wilson or something. He got married to a group in the church. He could not, for example, after a while, he left his wife, went to Harbor Island, where he spent several years in Harbor Island, when he was a licensed preacher. Sambo Scriven always had him designated as the one to succeed him. Sambo Scriven fell ill, and it was that Prince William was to return because members of the congregation kept writing to him, saying, look, you got to come back. You have to come back. The other arm of the church wrote to the governor, because in those days you were licensed by the governor to preach, and the governor revoked his license. And they wrote to the governor and said, well, they complained that Prince William's conduct was highly immoral and of an improper nature. Right? That's what they wrote. Right? So, those things, as I say, as it was then, it is today. They didn't know why, they never knew why Prince William went to Harbor Island. But that's what happened. So, as the congregants of Bethel Baptist continued to implore him to come back with the support of Sambo Scriven, the pastor, and then he realized that they had revoked his license. In his own words, he wrote again. He wrote a long petition to the Governor General, to the governor at the time, to have his license reinstated. Well, as I said, as it was then, it still is today. He said, I went to Harbor Island. When I went there for his words that he wrote, temporary ease of mind. And guess why he needed that ease of mind? His wife, Peggy, had what he called an ungovernable temper. And you'll find this in his writings. In the petition to the governor to reinstate his preaching license, this is what he said. And then eventually he came back and his license was reinstated. Now, you recall I said that Sambo, the pastor of Scriven, was ill. He eventually died in 1820. Right, so the issue arose now as to, we have to bury Brother Scriven, Pastor Scriven. And again, as I say, as it was then, it is now. So Prince William says, listen, we have to give him a proper burial. And we have about $40, that's a lot of money in those days, in the coffers, and we will use that to ensure that he has the proper send-off. Now, when they went, when they went to look for the money, it was gone. Yeah. So it was, and they found out that, and then there's an accusation that there's one guy named Archie Parker, one of the elders. They say he took the money. And that caused an uproar. And then all of that friction, even that history, even and then, the challenge became, and just the rift in the church. And so he decided, well, look, I better go, and I start my own church. We went right across the road. They're in the foot, St. John's Native Baptist Church. Now, one of the reasons why I know all this now, my son is a historian, researcher, and puts a lot of these things together. And he now does an oral historical tour from the museum, So I learn a lot from him, all these things, which is good. And so he then started the St. John's Native Society Church. And then after years, the two Baptist churches, they decided that they'll have a communion. So though there were two churches, they were not at war with each other. They communed together. But then guess what happened? The Baptist Missionary Society in London, they came to town. And they decided, look, if you all are Baptists, we should control you all. We want to be in charge. We want to run both of you all. Now, remember I called his name Shapper Morris? Shapper Morris was then the pastor for Bethel Baptist after Prince William. He didn't take on the post, per se, and started St. John. So Shapper Morris was in Bethel Baptist, Prince William in St. John. Prince William says, listen, no white. The Baptist Missionary Society in London, don't forget the atmosphere in that. We cannot let them come here to tell us, to dictate to us how to continue to enslave our people in their minds by preaching. We should not join up with them. If they want to start their churches, let them do that. We'll stay autonomous from them. But Dr. Morris said, no, man, I can fit with them. So Bethel Baptist remained with the Baptist Missionary Society of London, and Prince William then started the St. John's Native. That's where the word native came from. But this native means them foreigners ain't part of this. It's us. And they gave the birth of the movement. And of course, later on came, from Bethel Baptist came Zion to the Baptist Missionary and the other Baptist church. And eventually, they are now all together as they are today, which is good. What is it significant for us to appreciate the times in which these all things were perfect? And the courage and bravery of the one man, Prince William, to stand up to ensuring that we be who we are without the influence of those who are coming in to make us who they want us to be. And he was successful. So look what you have now. One Baptist movement under the umbrella of the Missionary and Educational Convention, all autonomous, and now all thinking alike, all like-minded individuals, while leading the way in promoting the gospel of the Lord. You know, I would recommend to the missionary, Dr. Christopher Curry at the University of the Bahamas just completed a book called Freedom and Resistance, a social history of black loyalists in the Bahamas. Prominent in that is the life and times of Prince William and many of the black preachers who were loyalists who came to the Bahamas. That helped to shape who we are and to break down the barrier of slavery. And so it is. I also will invite, and this is good because it's educational and it will be good to be a part of the library of each Baptist church. Another book that I recommend, that of Sean McQueenie, of Preaching the Gate, which speaks to the struggle of us black people in this country when we couldn't vote. When tonight you could be, tonight South Beach could go to bed and they could describe him as white tonight by law, or Elizabeth. And then tomorrow morning, by a stroke of the pen, they become black. Those are the times he was living in. Yeah, no, that's what they are. No, that's what's happening. And so I would wish to take this opportunity, and in each instance, the churches were the bedrock for educating us. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Baptist community for what they have done for me personally and my family. You know, I was christened in Transfiguration Baptist Church. My mother and father were Baptists all their life. I grew up in Zion Baptist Church in Old Bight, Cat Island. The programs and the watchman cry was part of my life. And I won't talk about Reverend Maxey is not here, but I used to go down to Mount Calvary on Blue Hill Road. And in those days, you know, preachers used to cane you, when you go into, you go to church, you're behaving, they will take care of you. Reverend Gentry, I stopped going to church because I started getting beaten. And Reverend Philip Matthew and his brother Prince, they were good at that. But I couldn't take much of it. But at the end of the day, the Baptist community has played a significant role in the development of us as a people, and particularly as a black nation. Because they were, from day one, at the forefront of the struggle for freedom from bondage. And they were there to help promote the greatest civil liberties that we were getting over the years. They played a tremendous role in the emancipation movement. They played a significant role in our majority rule movement. And they continue to play the role in educating our people. And for that, I join with the other members of Parliament who have given me thanks. I'd like to say personally, thank you each and every one. I know I can call all names, but calling names will only get me in trouble. So I say to all of you, I thank you very much for what you've done. Now, Mr. Speaker, before I take my seat, I'll be remiss if I were not to just bring to the Prime Minister's attention. I've been attempting to avoid getting into what I call governance. But you were elected to govern. But good governance requires fairness, openness, and that is not happening in my constituency. Yes, that's not happening in my constituency. You're hiring people and firing people. You're firing people I would have hired, some of them was F&M, you probably one or two of them. And then you're hiring only F&M. That's why I say bring it to your attention. I didn't say you know about it. Bring your attention. At the very least, if there are openings in the family island, let it be advertised. Let people know. I tell you what, just ask in the family island. In my constituency, how were employment handled? Everyone had an opportunity. And so the cry of victimization continues on your watch. And you need to perhaps open your eyes and find out what's going on. Because it is happening. Right? And so I would ask you to look into the hiring practices, particularly on San Salvador. Now you went down there and you told them, how come I lost San Salvador? Y'all always give me yours. And if you want to win it, you're going to win it by doing what you're doing. Okay, yeah, I know,
I shaking my head saying, how you mixing up the two of these, man?
They'll understand. Yeah. They'll understand. Because I want to speak to you earlier today, but they won't let me speak. I won't speak. So
forgive him, even though
someone said I should say to you all, not to forgive you, because you know what you're doing. When you fail, because you know what you're doing, and you're deliberately doing what you're doing.
Oh, Lord.
No, I didn't say it was. I say someone. So, Mr. Speaker, no, and I will just speak to you privately about BPL, because there's too many mixed signals coming out there about BPL and these increases. I could speak to you privately on that. I wanted to intervene today, but I think there's some serious issues that you probably need to Put your hands. And so, on Baptist Day, let us lift up the spirit of St. William. Because one of the things they continue to say about us as Bahamians, we're passive, we are not controversial, but not true. We are activists in our own way. We still have the spirit of St. William in us. Just sometimes we don't let it be known. Let us always appreciate that the work is not done. There's still a lot of land to be possessed. And I invite you to continue your work in ensuring that that land is possessed in truth and in fact. We support the bill of law as I am.
Thank you, Honorable Member. As many?
I just want to respond briefly to a statement
Chair
made by...
recognizes the Honorable Member for Garden
sir.
Hills.
On this good Baptist Day, Mr. Speaker, and coming from that strong Baptist heritage of Salem Baptist Church, Mr. Speaker, where my father was a deacon in the church. Absolutely. Mr. Speaker, the member for Cat Island raised an issue about hiring, and as the minister did the responsibility of public service, I was surprised by that action. I am not aware of any instance where the F&M, in any case, on Cat Island, St. Salvador, or any island, Mr. Speaker, made selective hiring. And I'd wish the member to advise me of the person so that we could immediately react to it, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member.
The minister for his response. I did bring before matters to his attention that he's addressed. So I got a voice note today really riling at me to raise this matter with you yesterday. So I will speak to you. No. I know the person directly. If it were. Okay. Thank you very much, and I will get to you.
Thank you. As many? Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Mike Isle.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank Almighty God for bringing me again to this place. I also thank the great people of the Macau constituency for sending me here to be their voice. It's my prayer that I continue to be the best MP and a caring, compassionate Bahamian that I am. Mr. Speaker, it is a privilege to be in this place. Not many people are afforded this opportunity. In particular, women. The first woman in Parliament was the Right Honorable Janet Boswick on June 11, 1982. Mr. Speaker, as a Christian woman and as a pastor, it's my great honor and privilege to be a part and support this historical bill. The Bahamas Baptist Missionary and Education Convention Incorporated Bill 2018. Yes, Mr. Speaker, the bill for an act to incorporate the Bahamas Baptist Missionary and Education Convention in the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, this member fully supports this bill. Mr. Speaker, I am of the view that the Bahamas Missionary and Education Convention in the Bahamas must and should be afforded the same privilege as other denominations that were incorporated by this honorable place. Mr. Speaker, I grew up in a Baptist church. I remember as a young child, my mother taking us to Mount Pleasant Green Baptist Church, at that time with Reverend Morse, who was the pastor. However, my late father, the late Kenneth Reckley, who was an Anglican, who attended the Anglican church, we also worshiped with him. Mr. Speaker, the Baptist denomination has done and continue to do great work in the community and the Baptists at large. There are churches throughout the Bahamas. In my view, they are fulfilling the mandate that Christ has given us: go into all the world and make disciples. And yes, Mr. Speaker, the Baptist educational system continues to have an impact that we all can see and feel. There is the Jordan Prince William School in the South in Zion Boulevard, the Charles W. Sanders School, the Baptist College on Jane Street, and many more schools that are operated by the Baptist churches. Mr. Speaker, I have benefited from the Baptist education system, the Bahamas Baptist Bible Institute, the Bahamas Baptist Community College, and the seminary external education by the Southern Baptist offered by the Baptist Institute. Mr. Speaker, the Baptist denomination is the largest religious organization in our country and should be afforded what others have. Mr. Speaker, I am of the view, and many share this view, that the Baptist leadership has played a major role in the development of our country. Yes, Mr. Speaker, and that is politically and majority rule. Mr. Speaker, the Baptist leaders were all and still are not afraid to be in front line when it comes to standing up for our people. Many were and still are not afraid to be identified politically. Mr. Speaker, this bill perhaps should have been brought before now, but it's never too late to do good. Mr. Speaker, as I started, this member supports this bill. Yes, Mr. Speaker, many great Baptist leaders went on from this life. Many I don't know, but may their soul rest in peace. Mr. Speaker, I think about Dr. H.W. Brown, Bethel Baptist Church, Dr. W.G. McPhee, Mount Calvary Baptist Church, A.S. Colbert, St. Paul's Baptist Church, Dr. Charles Smith, Zion Baptist Church, Dr. K.S. Darling, New Bethany Baptist Cathedral, Dr. Earl Francis, First Baptist Church, and many more who have departed. Yes, Mr. Speaker, I have not forgotten Dr. R.E. Cooper Sr., Mission Baptist Church, the one who delivered the first independence message in 1973, a chosen generation. Mr. Speaker, many great Baptists are still with us. I am convinced they are celebrating this day, and I want to help them celebrate. Dr. Charles W. Saunders, Dr. Michael Simonet, Dr. William Thompson, Dr. Simeon Hall, Dr. Philip Ramin, and many more. Mr. Speaker, I want to congratulate the Bahamas Baptist Missionary and Education Convention under the leadership of Dr. Lloyd C. Smith, a man of vision. The Word of God declares, where there's no vision, the people perish. There are those who feel that he is continuing to move the convention in the right direction. And all they can see the success of what he's doing. I have been advised that after Dr. Smith's election as president, he refused to allow his administration to occupy the office on Blue Hill Road. They now have a new administrative office on James Street, named in honor of Dr. Michael C. Simonet. Mr. Speaker, the Baptists and other religions and organizations continue to be the guiding light and direction for this nation. Mr. Speaker, the Word of God admonishes us, a nation and its people that forget God should surely die. The church is that beacon of hope. Yes, Mr. Speaker, we know that every now and then we need a checkup. Yes, and we know where to go. I believe, I speak for the Christian church. We know what makes life worth living for, and we know what makes death worth dying for. Mr. Speaker, the church has and will continue to play a major role in this nation's growth and development. That's also financially. Many of our pastors are well educated. They are good at what they do. Many have attended colleges and universities in the USA and other countries. Mr. Speaker, I have been hearing about religious tourism. It's a good vessel for this country. Change the name if we wish. The church has many of the answers for what any country goes through. The church knows how to bring people together. Mr. Speaker, the family, the state, and the church. Three inseparable institutions. The family is the primary one. Before there were any communities or nation, there was the family. The family, the bedrock of the nation. Mr. Speaker, when the first family broke down because of sin, God established the state. Mr. Speaker, the promise to Abraham was fulfilled in Jesus Christ. Based on a common faith, the church was established. Mr. Speaker, the Bahamas Baptist Missionary and Education Convention has done and continues to do great work and assists in the growth and development of this nation, spiritually, socially, and educationally. Mr. Speaker, God bless you. Mr. Speaker, God bless the honorable members, and God bless the Bahamas Baptist Convention leaders and its leadership. And as I conclude, I want us to be mindful, Mr. Speaker, the success of a nation will depend upon how we respond to God and accept the principle of God. Deuteronomy 28 and verse 1. And it says, and it shall come to pass that if you would listen to the Lord your God and observe all that he had commanded us to do, he said, I will cause all these blessings to come on you, to overtake you. When you go out, I shall bless you. When you come in, I shall bless you. Nations should look at you and call you blessed. For truly, my cow supports this bill.
Thank you, Honorable Member. As many, the Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Centerville.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker. Good afternoon, members of Parliament, President Smith, and the leadership of the Bahamas Baptist Missionary and Educational Convention. Good afternoon. Once again, I rise in the House of Parliament representing the beautiful and wonderful people of the Centerville constituency, inclusive of Grantstown, Farm Road, Centerville, Roll Avenue, and Culmusville. I want to give a shout out, the young people would say level up, to all the entertainers in and from the Bahamas. You have my support as it relates to the usage and exploitation of your talents. I can do that because I lived it. Thumbs up, keep pushing. The next generation of entertainers are depending on us. I beg leave, and usually when I beg leave, you know, it's about one thing, Mr. Speaker, but I think it's just in terms of recognizing the hard work and the dedication of the staff at the Centerville Primary School, and wanting to thank my Aunt Naomi Chipman for volunteering at Centerville Primary School as a grandmother of the preschool and also on the school board. I would also like to offer my condolences to Senator Dorset's family. She was a good F&M and a good person to me. I also take this opportunity to offer condolences to the family of the late Franklin Sweeting Sr., a father and mentor. As young people in the city of Nassau, Mr. Sweeting sent us home many times from his taxi, reminding us that church was at 7. So we all memorized his taxi plate number because we know that that meant go home and get ready for church. He always kept a watchful eye, especially on the children of St. Agnes, and for that I'm extremely thankful. Condolences to a champion of a woman, Andrea Sweeting, his wife, my good church member, and a good mother and grandmother, and a trailblazer in the fight against cancer. Also to our children and my dear friends, Frank, Theodore, Andrea, Didi, and Philippe. Lots of love and prayers to you all. I would be remiss, Mr. Speaker, if I did not offer condolences to the family of the late Honorable Bradley Roberts. Mr. Roberts represented part of the area I represent today, known as Grantstown. I called him Uncle Brad. Why? Just because I could. I believe Mr. Roberts fearlessly steered the national political chanter of our country. Good or bad, like him or not, without his passion and dedication to politics, we would know very little about our political self. His political innuendos, though at times disturbing, made you laugh, but also made you think. Is this really true? Do people really believe this? So I will miss Mr. Roberts, a political icon in his own right. Both Uncle Brad and I would frequent a particular eatery on West Bay Street. And I cannot lie, I couldn't wait to see him so that he could bring me up to date. Me, a sitting MP, up to date, not only on what went on in here, but what will go on sooner or later. So I will miss him. He could turn any story around. He could turn a good story to a bad story, and he could turn a bad one to a good one. The last time I saw him, he came all the way across the restaurant to invite me to a seat. In my own fashion, I said, Uncle Brad, where are you going now? He said, just come. So he sat me down to a table with the Honorable Prime Minister Hubert Ingram and the Honorable Prime Minister Perry Christie. And he said loudly in the restaurant, now you are in good company. And now I gone. And so he left. Rest in peace, Uncle Brad. I know you could not imagine that I would be a parliamentary pallbearer on Friday. Our country will miss you. Condolences to your family, and may he rest in peace. As I move into my presentation, I would have had the opportunity to attend Refuge Tabernacle Church last Sunday to witness the ordination of the office of ministers under the theme, I have chosen you. Thank you to Mrs. J for the invitation, and it was a pleasure to see former president of the Grand Bahama Christian Council, pastor of New Mount Olivet Baptist Church, Holmes Rock, Grand Bahama, who presided over the ordination, assisted by Bishop Reverend Dr. Lee Rodney Roll, the pastor at Refuge Tabernacle, a beautiful Pentecostal church in Cowpen Road. So congratulations to the newest ministers in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, Minister Ezekiel Lafleur, Minister Dudson Higgins, and Minister Keith Roll. Mr. Speaker, the religious demographics of the Bahamas speak to more than 90% of our people who profess a religion. And anecdotes suggest most attend church, some regularly and some casually. The country's religious profile reflects its diversity, with the Baptists being the largest community, representing almost 35%, followed by the Anglicans representing near 15%, and the Pentecostal community representing about approximately 8%. The Constitution and our laws and policies protect religious freedom, and in practice, the government generally enforces these protections. Churches and other religious congregations do not face any special registration requirements, although they must incorporate legally to purchase land. There are no legal provisions to encourage or discourage the formation of religious communities, which are required to pay some tariffs and stamp taxes as for-profit companies if they legally incorporate. The question then becomes, is there a difference between what we are doing now in terms of a simple registration and approval and or incorporation? And will the benefits of incorporation outweigh the benefits of a simple registration process? The Centerville constituency I was advised, have more than 10 Baptist churches with more than 10,000 members. Both are estimates as obtained by my office. There's Salem Baptist, Taylor Street, Mount Carmel, Calvary Haitian Baptist Church, Zion Baptist, Emmaus and McCullough, Mount Pleasant Green, Calvary Baptist, and they all have been doing a wonderful job in our area with regard socio-economic programs and Christian outreach. We continue to support their efforts. Mr. Speaker, I put it to this House and to the leaders of the Baptist community that there are many benefits to incorporation. Incorporation will help with succession planning and the continuity of the church. It will allow the corporate entity to continue in the event of individual incapacity, as well as catastrophic emergencies. So creating the corporate infrastructure can mean and contribute to my second point, which is the capacity building of your convention. God expects of his church to continue, and he expects succession planning for his church. Another advantage of this incorporation feature and this new structure is capacity building. It allows the church to restructure in a way that allows for greater ministry capacity. The corporate structure can acquire land. You can purchase and manage investments on behalf of your membership. You can seek international resources through other means, for example, international affiliations, international tax benefits, and local exemptions. To me, Mr. Speaker, this is not about church growth, in as much as it is about the growth of ministry. It is about rebranding your church community, improving the quality of ministry, and demanding through God a seat at the table of resources. And notice I didn't say a seat at the table of politics, a seat at the table of the resources. Let's shift our concentration, convention, from the numbers of members to ministry, from hiring staff to hiring disciples, from promoting poverty to promoting and exemplifying prosperity, even within our church families. This structure can help us prevent problems instead of just responding to the problems. We must press before all programs. Capacity building will allow the convention to have a more clearer, sharper vision. The new brand will allow you to tap into international resources that only corporations would be allowed to do so. This rebranding exercise would allow you to create the ministry God wanted you to create, so that those who are a part, your membership, can be empowered for generations to come. Once incorporated, this legal entity would be empowered to benefit in a way that only legal entities can, whether it is locally or internationally. Even if you are seeking funding internationally, corporations giving grants can only give grants to corporations, not individuals. Grant funding is peculiar and deemed ethically appropriate only when it goes to responsible corporate bodies. I challenge you to seek advice on how you may acquire local and global resources to expand the efforts of your ministry. In all of this, do not forget your people. Do not forget your members. Forgetting the people is something that is very easy to do once the corporate structure takes flight. What is important is that you create operational guidelines to ensure the benefit to members extend beyond words, but deeds. Empower them to be soldiers of Christ, where their lives can be an example of what it is to be Christian. Our God does not want us to be broke but spiritual. He does not want us to be broke but religious. He does not want us to be broke, but sanctified. He wants us to be financially stable, so that spreading the good news and evangelism can be maximized. So I challenge you to create a following of financially stable, self-sufficient members, as this law gives you the framework to do so. Use this new status to teach your membership to save, how to invest, how to spend, how to be self-sufficient and not self-reliant. Let them come to realize that all good gifts around us are sent from heaven above, and only God provides. Use your new status to advocate for your church and your members. Not only social advocacy, but the advocacy of financial empowerment. Let the benefits of the incorporation trickle down into the very everyday lives of your members through policy and guidelines. Not only in ministry, but in discipleship. Not only in poverty, but in wealth. Of course, I would have made some rounds in terms of calling up a few Baptist revs for their input. And their main concern was not so much the incorporation bill, but it was the concern of their membership, the impact of electricity bills and proposed taxes, and of course, the general cost of living. I just want to touch on the blacklisting of our country, which we tend to marginalize as only related to the financial services industry. And you may say, what does the blacklisting have to do with the church? Well, the truth of the matter is that churches, especially those in the Caribbean region, have been on the radar of the OECD, the FATF, and the CFATF for some time now. They believe that churches are actually very vulnerable to money laundering, and hence have been putting pressure on jurisdictions such as ours to monitor even the activities of the church. With this new rebranding effort, the church puts itself in a category of corporate entities that meet minimal regulatory requirements and hence minimizes the need to be targeted in this respect. So your effort to incorporate, your rebranding, it's a holistic approach to assisting us, the government, with meeting the demands of our international counterparts while at the same time embracing a strategy for your organization for succession planning, capacity building, and national development. So the challenges of our international economic diaspora or culture is far-reaching, and we must be prepared to save our economy by building our people, by building our churches, and by building our country. So we thank you for assisting with this new direction. It's a new direction for you, the Baptist community, and it's a new direction for our country. And it's a win-win situation in our commitment to national development. So if done and managed in a way that every single member of your church benefits, it puts us in a very, very good competitive position in reaching our goals. Mr. Speaker, God bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. God bless you all. God bless the leadership of the convention. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Member. As many, the Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Golden Isles.
Mr. Speaker, I should like to begin by, as usual, giving thanks to Almighty God, Yahweh Elohim, for touching the hearts of the people of the great constituency of Golden Isles to afford me this opportunity this afternoon. I'd like to begin by extending condolences and probably the member for Central and South Eleuthera may speak to it in number of statements, but I'm from Greencastle, Eleuthera. And 2 nights ago, a fire destroyed a home, and not only a home, but the life of a 5-year-old boy. He was burnt beyond recognition. And so you can imagine the effect it has had on the community. Small family island settlement, and they're devastated. And it behoves us to be mindful of the creature comforts that we enjoy. This particular home, they did not have electricity, and they were using a candle for light. And the mother stepped out and left a 10-year-old daughter and a 5-year-old son. And before she could return, the rest is history. And so I should like to extend my condolences to the mother. Her name is Christine Sweeting, and may the soul of her 5-year-old son, John Dorset, rest in peace. I should also like to extend sincere, heartfelt condolences to the family of the late, the former cabinet minister, and that political giant, Mr. Bradley Roberts. I didn't get to know him very well personally, but couldn't help but admire him from a distance. And certainly on that stage, on this stage, his presence will be missed. And it shows us, Mr. Speaker, that each of us are mere mortals. We have but a time and a season, and the sun will eventually set on each of our lives. And as the scripture admonishes us, that we ought to be ready for such a time. And so all of us would one day meet our demise. I should like to extend condolences to his entire family, and of course to the political organization that he was a part of, the Progressive Liberal Party. And may his soul, and the soul of all the other righteous departed, rest in peace. Today, I should speak just for but a few moments on this historic occasion. And it's one that we can seek to take a look at the past and learn some lessons from the past. I'm certain that this has a lot to do with the uncertain atmosphere generated by the rumors surrounding or clouding the non-profit legislation, and of which a number of churches were affected by, including and particularly the largest denomination in our country, the National Baptist Convention. And I'm sure they didn't take it too kindly that some denominations were obviously not a part of it, namely the Anglicans, the Catholics, and the Methodists, because this legislation is they already a part of it, as they shall be in the very near future. And so this has been long overdue to this organization. I'm reminded, Mr. Speaker, when I reflect on how this organization started, of a scripture in the book of Zechariah, the 4th chapter and the 10th verse, where it says, "Do not despise the day of small beginnings." Who would have thought that a runaway slave, we heard the contribution from the member from Cat Island of the history of it, but even here in the Bahamas, that history records that it was I'm thinking it was the governor who Blue Road was named after, that also sought to capture him. But their hiding place, the area they frequented, was in the Meeting Street area. And of course, that's the area where they preached, and that's the area where they actually began ministry. But deeper than that, Mr. Speaker, is when I was in college, and learned about the Underground Railroad. I was taught that it went from the United States, southern United States, and it went north to Canada. But however, since then, I've discovered that anywhere that runaway slaves they went to and sought freedom was considered an underground railroad. And among them, those areas in the Bahamas, there's Red Bays in North Andros, where the Seminole Indians are, or where they went to, the area of Gambia, and it was authenticated by Elijah, the late Elijah Morris, and of course, the Meeting Street area by the late Prince William and Sambo Scriven. And this was authenticated, Mr. Speaker, by the U.S. National Park Service and the Travel Professionals of Color, TPOC. Over 300 of them actually visited a jurisdiction, and they confirmed it. And so, and that's a form of tourism, heritage tourism, where persons travel around the world and they seek out sites and such as we have. The history of the Baptists in the Bahamas, as we are learning, is a rich one. And the convention itself that was started by Reverend A.C. Simonet, and the mantle of leadership was passed on to Reverend Dr. T.B. Donaldson, passed it on to the Reverend Dr. Enoch Backford Sr., then to Reverend Dr. R.E. Cooper, Reverend Dr. Samuel Colebrook, A. Samuel Colebrook, Reverend Dr. Charles Smith, Reverend Dr. C.W. Saunders, Reverend Dr. William Thompson, Reverend Dr. Anthony Carroll, and then Reverend Dr. William Thompson again, and now it's in the hands of one who is present among us, Reverend Dr. Lloyd Smith. And so it is fitting that on this day, that the Baptist, being the largest religious organization in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, the last statistics reflects that the Baptist has grown and continues to hold the largest slice of the religious denomination's pie. And the figure, I'm told, is now in excess of some 122,000. And so to understand the history associated with this, the late Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey said, a people without knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. And so today, we know the hands of yesterday shaped today, and hands of today will shape tomorrow. And so for many among us and in our listening audience who seem to not understand what struggle is about, I just want to leave these words from a song that I used to play when I was on the radio. And it's called Yet Still I Rise. And it says, shattered, but I'm not broken. Wounded, but time will heal. Heavy the load, the cross I bear. Lonely the road I trod, I dare. Shaken, but here I stand. Weary, still I press on. Long are the nights, the tears I cry. Dark are the days, no sun in the skies. Yet still I rise. Never to give up, never to give in. Against all odds, yet still I rise. Who would have thought all these years later that the National Baptist Convention would have emerged to be where it is today, from very, very humble beginnings. So never ever judge people where they are. Never judge them how they start. You never know. You never know how they will end. You never know where they will end up. You never know what roles they play. And so today I commend and I salute all of the members and particularly those who would have gone on, who championed the way. And that's why it's critically important for us to maximize our potential, make our contributions, because we never know who we're impacting and how it will affect them. And so my pastor is sitting in the gallery also. And I didn't hear him mention his church, the great Forsyth Baptist Church in Nassau Village. The Reverend Dr. Charles Coleman, they called him the walking Bible. He'll walk through it from Genesis to Revelation and back. So I just wanted to pay homage to him and to all of these esteemed gentlemen. And this in scripture we call this a great cloud of witnesses. And I bless the Lord for them. And obviously, naturally, Golden Eyes supports this. And so, may Almighty God continue, Mr. Speaker, to bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, to bless the National Baptist Convention, and all the accolades that will come with this. It's been a long time coming. Congratulations. The change is at hand. God bless you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. As many? Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Mangrove Key, South and Central Andros.
The Speaker, is very hard or difficult to speak after, or make a contribution after my good colleague and fellow broadcaster, now parliamentary colleague, the Reverend Vaughn P. Miller. But I too must rise, and I accept his words of admonition, especially the latter word. It's not how one begins, but how one ends. The Speaker, before I would proffer my comments this afternoon to the Baptist Missionary and Educational Convention Incorporation Bill 2018 by paying a very brief tribute to warrior, colleague, friend, and a mentor, the late Bradley B. Roberts, one who accepted the encomium of Big Bad Brad. Very proud of it. Former Member of Parliament and Minister in the administration of the Right Honorable Perry G. Christie, being elected back in 1990 under the leadership of the father of our nation, the Right Honorable Sir Lyndon Pinling. To his wife this afternoon, Mrs. Hatlin Roberts, and also his son, Obi, and the rest of the family, on behalf of our leader, party, and a grateful nation, we extend our condolences. Mr. Speaker, I am glad I would have met Bradley Roberts because he gave me, as an island boy, courage, taught me how to have a sense of service and that of selflessness, and how hard work pays off. I'm also glad I met Bradley Roberts because he understood the fight of the disenfranchised of our society, the poor, the underprivileged, the misunderstood, and one who understood and stood for the philosophy of the Progressive Liberal Party. Mr. Speaker, I'm glad I would have met Bradley Roberts because not only as a PLP, but as a warrior, and one who never shrank from a fight or cause for the everyday Bahamian man or woman. I'm glad I would have met Bradley B. Roberts this afternoon as a good Catholic, strong community builder, historian, an anthropologist in his own right. Mr. Speaker, I'm glad I would have met Bradley B. Roberts, who had the guts of the Apostle Paul, the stomach and spirit of valor of the Apostle Peter, and the wit of Albert Einstein. And I note a piece from Einstein's collection, life is like a riding bicycle To keep your balance, you must keep moving. And he did just that. To him, on this solemn occasion as I celebrate with the Baptist community, my brothers and sisters, if I were in a good old jumper church, there was a hymn that we will sing, I think it's number 53. Well done, my child. He'll say that day, like Paul of old, you fought a good fight. Well done, my child. Well done. May his soul rest in peace. Mr. Speaker, in my brief but 10 minutes, I would note the fact that the member for Cat Island, Ramkey, and San Salvador gave a very good and somewhat all-encompassing historical perspective to the Baptist community in our Commonwealth. And I note the commentary of the member for Centerville, who is the member of Parliament for my mother, who's watching just now in McCullough Corner East. And he gave the financial and the fiscal advice to the August Baptist community and leaders gathered here this afternoon. I would note the fact that to be an island boy, being a Church of God young man, and seeing the Baptist community at its best in the late 60s and early 70s and 80s was an interesting experience. I come from a different perspective. All of the others would generally speak of their experience of seeing New Providence. I'm an island boy, I'm a down home boy. So I would have been around and seen and the late Uthal Rogers in Deep Creek, the Reverend Benjamin Neely in the Bluff at Friendship, the historic Friendship Baptist Church, the Reverend Theophilus Smith at Mount Olive in Smithfield, where I was born and grew up with my grandparents, the late Reverend Gerald Forbes in Kemps Bay, down home, the Reverend Thurston Thompson, who stood tall like my good friend, the Reverend Dr. Philip McPhee in High Rock at Upper Zion, the late Reverend Prince Penniman, all proud Baptists, the late Reverend Oral Thompson in High Rock, Uncle Oral, the Reverend Charlie Forbes at St. Luke's in Dreexill, the Reverend Emperor McKenzie in Long Bay Keys. And there would have been women like Mother Lita Davis, Mother Rosnell Ferguson, and others who would have been a part of the great Baptist pantheon and those who believed as persons of faith. The Baptist comprises the largest religious denomination in the Bahamas, one of the oldest Christian churches in our country. Baptists were the first religious bodies in our country to become fully autonomous. And for centuries, Baptists have been proclaiming the Christian faith throughout the length and the breadth of this Bahamas. And I know the fact, as I talk about length and breadth, the late Reverend Dr. Gentry McPhee, the father of my good friend, the Reverend Dr. Philip McPhee, wouldn't have accepted what Bishop Simon B. Hall would have accepted. Bishop Simon Hall would have preached, and I wouldn't say exactly which island he would have preached on, for 1 week in a farmland to only get a basket of dilly. A basket of dilly. Dr. Philip McPhee, my friend, know his father, he would have told them they got to go find the offering for him to get back to town. But his father wouldn't hide me tonight, but I ain't storing on him this evening. But Dr. Hall would have given much as a young man. As a matter of fact, it was under Dr. Hall's preaching that my mom would have come to know our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. They were the days when he returned, and my mom would have given the story over and over, when he had those major and mega services like T.D. Jakes of the world today at the historic Zion on East and Shirley Street. Dr. Hall, remember those days, sir? They were the days. And she said one night she was coming from Kentucky on Edith and the girls, and she decided she would stop. So people do not know the level of connectivity between myself and Dr. Hall is because my mom always talks highly about the Reverend Dr. Simeon B. Hall. We call him now Bishop Hall. They have been an unfailing advocate for the uplifting of the masses through social reform, the practice of democracy, and the foremost advocates for justice, equal rights, religious freedom, self-determination, and national independence. You heard earlier from the member for Michael who talked about those who have been a part of the process. Dr. Philip Raming, Ari Cooper, Reverend Dr. H.W. Brown, and many others. A.S. Colebrook. Allied to their commitment to missions, Baptists have over the years sought to improve the condition of the Bahamian people through education. And this is one of the most sterling and most landmark achievement, I must say, for Baptists in our society. In order to make a greater impact on the nation as a denomination, 83 years ago, the visionary leadership of the various Baptist associations and churches took the landmark decision to join forces in forming the Baptist Missionary and Educational Convention with the express purpose of advancing missions and education. Through much struggle, sacrifice, and dedication, the success which followed has been outstanding and has greatly influenced the progressive course in building the modern Bahamas. Indeed, I must include that the Baptist educational system has 4 notable leading educational institutions today in the contemporary Bahamas. Jordan Prince William High School, Charles Saunders Baptist High School, where my daughter Paige attended that school. Very proud of her achievement. I must say I want to commend the Baptist community. Also, the Baptist Bible Institute and the Bahamas Baptist Community College. These institutions, Mr. Speaker, are all providing quality education at the preschool, primary, high school, and the collegiate level. Thousands of graduates, many of whom were disadvantaged, are now occupying positions at all levels throughout the public and the private sector of our beloved Bahamaland. In addition to its educational facilities located on extensive properties, holdings at Blue Hill Road, Zion Boulevard, and much of Jane Street, the Baptist Convention completed the Michael Simonette Administrative Complex adjacent to the William Thompson Auditorium on Jane Street. And for Dr. Simonette, who is now been noted and connoted as the father of modern-day Baptists, and to Dr. Marina Sands, who we now call the mother of Baptists, I want to commend Dr. Lloyd Smith and his presidency and all who served with him for such a noble achievement. They are now getting their accolades while they are yet alive. And there would have been nothing more special, Mr. Speaker, when you would have been growing up as a young man in Smithsville in South Andros, in very challenging conditions of the 1970s, and walking to school at the Kemps Bay. And when Dr. Simonette those were coming, along with Bishop Moss from the Church of God and others were coming to the Family Islands, all the trappings and the toilets and the yards and everything had to be kept for the bishops as they came. I won't go any further, you all know what I'm talking about. But there would have been nothing more special than to have at the Mount Olive Baptist Church on a Sunday morning, everybody getting together. Because the Newfoot, Richard, James, and everybody getting together, some tune, some chord, ain't quite coordinated. The late Albert Johnson. There's one song that the Baptists raised in those days, Bamboo Town. That song was, Master Speak, Thy Servant Heareth. As a matter of fact, the Baptists, when we were growing up, I was more afraid to pass the Baptist church than I was to pass the Cleveland Catholic church. The Baptists had more chance, in my view, than the Catholic church in those days. They sang, as a matter of fact, that's why when I go to the traditional churches, even my good friend Dr. Mackey is getting away from it now, they used to sing quite a bit of the ceremonial trappings and sing after the offering is lifted. I like those historical things about Baptists. And you must maintain the historicity of your religion. You know, there's still Dr. Strawn and Dr. B. Bennett. The president here is a little hard, that's my friend. Dr. Olio Younger. But there's something special about those old songs of Zion. And Dr. Hensey's back there from Loveville. He knows what I'm talking about. Pastor Strawn, it's good to see you. So there's something about those old songs. When you hear those songs, they unctionize your spirit. And there's nothing like hearing a good old Baptist preacher whoop at the end. This new style of preaching, I like, when they say, and I want to tell you, yeah, and I don't want, the new preaching is good. I can live with that. But Baptist, you must be proud to be who you are. I'm a proud jumper, but I like when I visit a Baptist church. Because we all one. We are part of what they call the unordered church. But we praise that God, and we praise Him with much emphasis and expression of thankfulness to the Almighty God. So I'm proud to be a part of the Baptist family this afternoon. I must note the fact that the convention has also had extensive plans and demolish. I want to replace the headquarters on Blue Hill Road to carry on extensive upgrading and expansion to schools and colleges. And therefore, the enactment of the Baptist Missionary and Educational Act today is a special one, which will incorporate the convention as a body corporate, will gratefully facilitate the noble purposes and the work of the convention for the greater benefit of the kingdom of God and the people of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. The Speaker, one could not help but note that in the Baptist community there are some very special dates that one must take and times that one must take note of in particular. And I had one or two notes here that if you came from the Family Islands, I have another 5 minutes, you came from the Family Islands, you had to go with your cousins or what have you, you had to go to St. John's. You all know what I'm talking about. You had to go to St. John's with Dr. O.A. Pratt back in the day, and there was a certain sense of being in church when you went to St. John's back in those days. And also, you went to St. John's or Bethel. If you're Anglican, you went to St. Agnes. And you heard about the name Reverend Dr. Beckford and Ari Cooper, Reverend Dr. A.S. Colebrook, Bobby Doe's father, Reverend Dr. Charles Smith, Clifford, my friend, we were together in Jamaica, the Reverend Dr. C.W. Saunders, Reverend Dr. Thompson, who I know very well, Dr. Carroll and others, and now Dr. Smith. Very large population, making up a very large segment of our population in the Bahamas today is the Baptist community. I know the fact, though, on a humorous side, and I thought I should take this is a brief pericope from prepared notes. It was that the late Dr. A.S. Colebrook got up in church prior to the 1967 election. And he said to the majority, I wish I had the resonance of his Baptist voice. Maybe Dr. Hall could one day simulate that voice. Said, I am not telling you how to vote today, but the hymn for today is simply all the way my Savior leads me. So therefore, I note the fact today that I had to come and be a part of this very special day with my Baptist friends. It was just a few days ago that I stood with them alone at the Baptist convention at Reverend Dr. Smith's church at the convention, and I want to commend him because he and Dr. Macri would have been a part of my days when I would have been a much more restless soul in the days of the Good Morning Bahamas show and those regattas back in the day. And Dr. Smith had the Lonesome Dove, Dr. Macri the Thunderboy, got many, many beatings on the waterfront. But they all played a very pivotal role in my development. And they would have been I didn't say he come last, but I say he got plenty beating on the waterfront. But he's never given up. And I commend them all for that this afternoon. Dr. Simon Hall in those days had had a preaching series on why Steigerly shot Billy. And that was a very topical one. I never got a check for that sermon. I promoted that whole series very well on ZNS radio back in the day. But to say how far the Baptist community has come from, As a matter of fact, Baptists were not allowed, like other, what I call faiths for the most part, outside of what we call the ordered ones, on ZNS radio up until the late 1960s for the most part. You couldn't get on ZNS radio. And so when you see the history and how far you have come now to be the leading, and one of the, I should say the leading entity in this country, as an organization, I want to salute you. The amount of persons who have gone on to get their education courtesy of your convention. You've encouraged many young people to aspire to be better than your forefathers were. And I want to say proudly this afternoon that as a member of the body of faith, I celebrate this special event this afternoon, Dr. Smith, and I wish you will continue to take the Baptist community to another level. And I would want you not to be Nassau-centric in your proclamation in this Baptist Missionary and Educational Convention. I look forward, Mr. Speaker, to hearing from Dr. Smith after my overt and candid support this afternoon, where the Baptist community, they're going to be holding events all over Andros, Michael, Eleuthera, Exuma, but especially Andros. I'll go back to that again. My thing is that the church must be a part of our society. And once we begin to remove the church from playing that special role in the development of our society and our society in the 21st century and beyond, we're going to be headed in the trajectory that is not going to be very pleasing for our further development. I do not support the mantra of many other countries in the developed world, separation of church and state. There are roles for them both to play, but I simply subscribe to the notion that those who would follow the principles of our God would continue to survive and stand strong. So on that note, Mr. Speaker, I would want to commend the Baptist community. You make me proud this afternoon for your achievements. I would want to wish you the very best, and to Dr. Smith and all those who've come to celebrate. And most importantly, what I like about the fact is that many times we have days in Parliament for different entities and organizations. They come in the morning time for the first half hour. And as soon as you read a little something, or the Prime Minister get up and say something with one of the other ministers and maybe someone from our side, they're gone. I am celebrating the fact that you've come back to make sure your bill, and you see who speaks on your bill, who's present in this place, and also to make sure it's passed. And don't forget, at the end of the day, there's plenty of Baptist votes, and I hear, okay? Mr. Speaker, that's a lighter note, but I would like to say that I totally salute the opportunity. I take this opportunity to salute you and commend both the past and the present visionary leadership of the Baptist Missionary and Educational Convention and its various institutions for their invaluable contribution to our country. Long live the Baptist community. Long live the Baptists as a people of faith. Long live the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. The member for South, Central, and Mangrove Kiandra stands proud today with Baptists all over the Commonwealth of the Bahamas with my unequivocal support. God bless you.
As many? Chair recognizes the honorable member for Pine Ridge.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. In whom shall I be afraid? I'd like to take this opportunity to say how much it was a pleasure to have the family of the late Mr. Edmund Moxley with us earlier today. I want to wish St. Barnabas well as he continued to lift and
proclaim historical facts about a noble man that once stood in this place and upon whose shoulder I also stand upon, especially to see his wife, Miss Sylvia, here today, along with his children. I also wish to give condolences to Miss Lillian Walker, the wife of one of the persons in the Pine Ridge constituency, particularly Region C area in Grand Bahama. Lillian Walker lost her husband. Her husband was a good MACPAC, a good supporter of this particular candidate and parliamentarian. And then I would be remiss if I did not express my condolences to the family of the late, the Honorable Bradley Roberts, especially his wife, Ms. Hartland, his children, and especially his son, Obie Roberts, who seems to be following in his footsteps. Mr. Roberts was a political figure in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas that will always be in our hearts and our minds, and we will always remember him for his ferocious ability to speak to the issues and to bring vigor to the campaign, particularly within the last 20-odd years here in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. May his soul and may the soul of all the departed rest in peace. Mr. Speaker, it is with pride and pleasure that I speak on behalf of the good and gracious people of the Pine Ridge constituency who have afforded me this opportunity to stand in this hollow place by way of election. Mr. Speaker, it is not my intention to be before you very long by way of dissertation, but just long enough to support the Bahamas Baptist Missionary and Educational Convention Incorporation Bill 2018. Mr. Speaker, the church, by extension the Baptist community, has played a strategic role throughout this country by seeking to transform lives through the power of Christ, bringing about a spiritual, social, and significant impact. Can you imagine what our country and community would be like, perhaps even far worse, if it were not for the existence of the church? The church is established by God to be the moral compass of a society, while simultaneously being the social conscience of the government. You ought not use the church to obtain their vote or romance their membership for support. And when the church requires you to have a certain standard or asks you to consider the poor, you ignore their cry. Mr. Speaker, the church gets blamed a lot and is often castigated and lambasted. The church is always going through this and being asked, what is the church doing? I want the country to know, if the church wasn't doing what it is doing, the Bahamas would be even worse than what it is. The church consistently and continuously has been housing the homeless, clothing the naked, feeding the hungry, visiting the sick, and in prison. The Church of the Living God is the biggest and greatest social service in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And most bishops and pastors would tell you they are repetitively doing the Jesus miracle of feeding the 5,000 with 5 loaves and 2 fishes. Mr. Speaker, in other words, the church for some time has been doing more with less, but have many great accomplishments through the grace of God. Mr. Speaker, not only do we feed the hungry, clothe the naked, and house the homeless. But the church finds itself in today's circumstances, paying school fees, college tuition, home mortgages, hospital bills, and even funerals. The tithes and offerings are often never enough to do all of this. But the critic always comes at the church saying it's all about money. If there's so much money in pastoring, I want to ask the question, how come you haven't started preaching yet? You have to be called and anointed to serve the church and the people of God. Mr. Speaker, I believe it is grossly unfair to criticize an organization that is impacting the very core of our society, bringing relief to so many socially, mentally, and academically. Mr. Speaker, the government of the Bahamas would do good to listen more attentively to the church, not just when it's election time. I'd be the first to say we don't always speak with one voice, and that might be due to our ecumenical tabulations. Notwithstanding this, when the church speaks, the government ought to listen. May not always respond, but you ought to listen. We are, the church, the largest organization in this country. The church, our membership exceeds that of the Kiwanis, the Rotary, the Lodge, and political organizations. Most of the organizations, named and unnamed, usually are part of the church before joining any of the other organizations. The church is the only place you come to when you are hatched, matched, and dispatched. Mr. Speaker, if people, persons, the privileged and privileged have not yet recognized through the corridor of history, due to their sheer ignorance, the reality is you ought not and you should not fight the church. You can't win when you fight the people from the church, in the church, or even the church. The church is built on the rock, and the gates of hell, nor your hell, will prevail against it. Mr. Speaker, the church has developed frustration from successive governments in the Bahamas, only who seems to use the church conveniently, oftentimes, to advance its governmental agenda. We must always remember the church and its servants' first obligation is to God. And what I'm glad about as a personal witness, God has the final say on everything and everyone. Mr. Speaker, I'm almost through. The Baptist Church in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas is an outstanding organization that has impacted this country historically, politically, educationally, and socially. There are many facets and tenets, or even umbrellas, of the Baptist denomination. But they all come together as one from time to time to worship, to march, convene, confer, to discuss the advancement of the Baptist movement in the Bahamas. It is fair to say that the Baptists throughout this country have been native, Union, Zionist, nationals, independent, Commonwealth-like, and progressive in their spiritual ideologies. I hope I got everybody. They all collectively add to the formation of what we're doing here by way of incorporation, the Bahamas Baptist Missionary and Educational Convention. An outstanding denomination with still much to offer to this country. May I also indicate that my notes were made prior to you coming here this morning and giving us additional historical data, but you don't need much, I don't need much to talk about what I'm a part of. Mr. Speaker, there have been many great spiritual giants who have helped to open the eyes of our people, as so many dynamic men and women, past and present, have contributed to the national development from the Baptist faith. Persons that I knew of, like the late Reverend H.W. Brown, Reverend R.E. Cooper, Reverend Dr. Beckford, Reverend Dr. G.W. McPhee, Reverend Garnet King, Reverend A.S. Colbert, Lavania Stewart, Harriet McDonald, and Charles Smith, all have gone on to glory. Mr. Speaker, still amongst us, Reverend Dr. William Thompson, Dr. Michael C. Simony, Reverend Charles Saunders, Reverend Dr. Philip Ramming, Reverend Dr. Simeon B. Hall, Reverend Dr. Timothy Stewart, who was recently elected as president of the Progressive Baptist Incorporation USA. Such a milestone accomplishment for a Bahamian residing in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, then of course, you have the Reverend Delton Fernando, president of the Bahamas Christian Council, the Reverend Lloyd Smith, president of the Baptist Convention, and these honorable gentlemen sitting in the gallery, and others who I've not named, but you've all made major contributions, not just to this country, but I hasten to say, even to my life. Mr. Speaker, these and many other men and women have contributed to the advancement of Baptists in the Bahamas and have assisted in the development of Christianity, community, and country. I'm just about done. But if I was to name this, I would call this the Baptist Hour. And in the Baptist Hour, in the Baptist Hour, they would remind us fervently, I need no other argument. I need no other plea. It is enough that Jesus died, and that he died for me. I feel a Baptist spirit. Mr. Speaker, it is indeed with great pleasure on behalf of the people of Pine Ridge to support the Bahamas Baptist Missionary and Educational Convention Incorporated Bill 2018 with all its legal and invested powers by virtue of the passing of this bill. Pine Ridge supports this bill and wishes Baptists everywhere. I've preached in many churches from Bimini in the north to Anagua in the south, throughout the Bahamas, every success. God bless the Baptists, and God bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
Thank you, Honorable Member. As many, the Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Pine Wood.
Good evening.
You get all the Baptist
Mr. Speaker, I rise by the grace of God for the good of Baptists and on the authority of Pine Wood. First of all, I have cause to give God praise because in our last budget debate, we made some hard calls. And in those calls, it was very important that our country not suffer any natural disasters during this hurricane season. Thus far, God has been good to us. We have been spared. Other nations have not. We're almost to that point in time when the season will be officially over, but I consider it not robbery to give thanks. I've asked on many occasions, including that time, that we as a nation, understanding where we are, need to pray for the success of the government, pray for the success of the planning, pray for the good of our Commonwealth. And I still stand by that. I take this time and also support and join my colleagues in sending condolences to Bradley Roberts and acknowledging posthumously the work of Edmund Moxie. And I send a reminder of the work that we do in Pinewood as well, and invite everybody to our festival on the 17th and our park renaming after Isaiah Taylor, and the festival that is in honor of Dennis Dean. But truly, this is a very, very special time in the life of our church, in the life of Baptists. We see a church that has come of age. The movement of the church sort of remind me of the admonition that God said to remember your first love, and the admonition to go back and do the former things, because the things that started the Baptists off were characteristics and traits and principles that should never be lost in time. I believe that the church should evolve, but there are just some things that just can't change, because the wise man Solomon says that there is nothing new under heaven. I say that because right now we see a church struggling to ensure that the church remains the ownership of a we and never become the ownership of a me. It is paving a way for the individual to individually benefit from the power of unity to the pleasure and the glory of God. God has risen the Baptist community from a place in time where the true original founders could not even own the churches, or the paper to say they owned the churches that they were established. They had to use a surrogate. They could not license themselves. They had not even state support to carry the name reverend or to marry or to have the trappings. No, we don't have white churches and black churches in our country now, but way back then, the persons of the African diaspora and the slaves did not even have the privilege to assemble themselves to say, this is our church, our place of meeting. Now we see from those persons who would have gone and create the avenues to worship their God, now standing among our nation, representing almost a quarter of our people. So we have a right to say, how great thou art. We have a right to look up and say, we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. We see a nation that should be proud that this denomination, as was stated, has the ability not only to make a big change and an impact within his own nation, in his own Jerusalem, but also worldwide. Dr. Timothy Stewart and the Progressive Baptist Convention, and even now our past president of our Baptist Union remains the president of the Caribbean Baptist Union. We see the likes of His Grace Bishop Ellis and the global network that he has established. It shows that could it be to the benefit of a country if the prophet finally have honor in his own home? Could would it eventually be to the benefit of us all if we simply begin to recognize that there is greatness among us? That there's wisdom among the people who you grow up with, who you sup with? Can we one day realize and be able to speak positively about ourselves and say God has enabled us by His grace to lead ourselves and take us to a new level? The church has come of age, and I want our country to recognize really who and what the church is, because what the church has become, I think it is very important that not only we as a nation, but we as a government begin to appreciate the dynamics in which it brings to the table for the benefit of us all. We stood in this parliament and we passed the budget for the benefit of the nation, but I want to admonish us to recognize that the successful advocacy and service of Christendom, yea, even the Baptists, are the major catalyst to the success of any economic expansion. If but for a moment the Baptists failed to be the salt of the earth and the light unto the world, what would happen to our world? What would happen to our Bahama land? It is really also the Baptists that accrues more to the social development of our nation and even governments. Sometimes I sit and I'm alarmed at things that I hear on our radios and even occasionally in this parliament when there were being threats of taxing even the church. And in my mind I said, what blatant ignorance is this? But they don't know the value of which the church has brought to this society. So much so, I must use the biblical analogy that the church itself, once removed from the world, tribulation begins. The church is an essential service, and I believe the church is like the police officer that cannot strike or should not strike. I believe the church is like a good government that should not strike or should not give up. I believe churches like doctors who have a Hippocratic oath and should not strike and abandon their posts. I believe the church, because if the church would abdicate their authority and their position, this land will be chaos. The church is valuable. They call government Big Daddy or Big Brother. Well, then the church should be, as the scriptures say, the bride, which makes her Big Mama. Because, see, when the brother is out there fishing and doing things, it's the mother that tends to the crying children. It's the mother that tends and make use of whatever it has in hand while daddy brings home the bacon. It is the mother that is there during the trial and the tribulation. It is the mothers that update the father as to what's going on in the kingdom called the home. The daddy is responsive to what the mother says is needed in the household. Should not that be a relationship between the government and Christendom? Whereas they can get the true pulse of what's going on in the society, whereas the true information can be disseminated. What a powerful combination that will be if there exists a level of harmony between the Christianity, the religion of our Commonwealth, and that of those who are elected to serve. This time is so pivotal, sir. Right now, we have the 10th Baptist president of the Bahamas Baptist National Baptist Missionary and Educational Convention. And we see this pivotal bill being brought together, one that will cost the Baptist community, and yea, and I need you to understand, every time we say the Baptist National, that means whatever accrues to the Baptist representative of what will impact this country. It goes hand in hand. So now we see that the 10th, and the 10th is very symbolic, you know, because it's a time for wholeness, it's a time for harmony. It's a divine number, and at this time, the now president, the Reverend Dr. Lloyd Smith, he has brought into power with this great witness of men, such a time as this, a very, very important bill that will bring about a tremendous renaissance if they push, not only to the Baptist community, but indeed to our whole Commonwealth of the Bahamas. One that will not just benefit us on a religious front, but economically. One that will change the culture, because when I began to outline the things that he envisioned, the Baptist Credit Union, right now our country is suffering. Not from lack of preaching, but from lack of teaching and examples. So now we can see a change where it will move from the average savings of a Bahamian person being $500 to a point where they could really save and benefit and find unity and strength through the Baptist Credit Union. I'm talking about things that will benefit us tremendously as a whole, nationally, as an uplift of people. When I look at the vision of this team of Baptist leaders, and no need to go into history because they're standing now on the shoulder, and I appreciate all that's being said, but they are ushering in a paradigm shift that reminds me of the things that I heard in history that made us so strong. When we see the establishment of the credit union, we begin to see a level of independence coming to the people of God, an era where there will be greater lack of dependence on the state. And I don't know about you, from a governmental perspective and the struggle in which we have, anything that lightens the load of the public purse is a blessing indeed and can bring about great support, especially from people whose heart is in the right place. Because like Abraham, I know that not all money you should take. Some things Jesus say, you're not going to make me rich, but you can always look at the church and know that what they offer comes from the heart of God, and it is meant totally for the good. We're struggling now with the health of our nation. We're struggling now with catastrophic insurance. We're struggling now from even persons whose houses have not been insured from numerous storms past. And we see a church rising to the fore and saying, we will show you how, through the spirit of unity as articulated in Genesis chapter 11, that there is nothing impossible for us when we have one language, one speech, one voice, moving in one direction. God himself said nothing would be withheld from them. Now they're coming together and realizing the power of economy of scale. And this bill is the blessing of the state and the qualifying of the state to the body of Christ and saying, be free, be fruitful, multiply, know that we are on your side. And now you will see the Baptists pushing to develop home insurance, car insurance, taking the wealth of the just for the just to do the right things. I'm excited about this because this is a very fresh vision for Baptists. We see the medical insurance that will come about. Now look at it. Not only will they be with you in your time of need, not only will they lay hands on you with oil, but they will ensure that all avenues are covered and your church will be there with you in your time of need and help you in your service with your medical needs. No longer do you have to give your money to a company that is there for profit. You now invest in yourself, and God is able to bless you. The National Baptists have a serious pension plan, and it is so prophetically on time because these are national issues now. They round about the cost of health insurance. You know the 2% everybody call it tax and not tax? I see an article, union saying, hell no, we're not going to contribute to our pension. We see people worrying about savings. We're bringing a bill to deal with the issue of dormant accounts right now. And it's amazing that this bill was being crafted before these issues came up. And this bill, as it relates to the address by President Lloyd in the recent Baptist Convention, prophetically speaks to exactly what is happening in our nation now. And you are seeing as a government almost 1/4 of the nation saying, we will take this burden on by working together and being able to shift the load. If I don't see that as the church coming to the rescue of the state, I don't know what else it is. We see the Baptists not only with creating pension programs, which is right. But we see them also pushing their education with their bookstores, and they will encourage our pastors and our children to write their stories, and we have a place. We see them taking on great responsibility, including their own printing presses. We see them moving even in the era of agriculture, Marco City. We see a denomination that is putting their money where their mouth is. We're seeing a dedication of 50% of the land that is owned by Jordan Prince William to be dedicated for the education and development of agriculture within the Baptist community. And see, you look at that as agriculture. Isn't it one of the prime directives of this government to address the issue of food security? When the U.S. had the attack on September 11th, Mr. Speaker, a lot of people didn't realize that our country was in distress. When they shut down their borders and checking everything else, we was running on fumes because supplies couldn't come in. If Florida get hit heavily, we see because of the storm hitting Mexico, the Israelis want to come and invest in the Bahamas to farm because the salt water damaged so much of their land. With the climate change and the prediction of Scripture, the world condition is so unstable that the Bahamas cannot survive on the export from everywhere else. Food security in our country is important, and the church is standing up and saying that we will teach food security and agriculture in our schools, and we will dedicate half of our land in our school to do this, and the land has already been tilled. Then they went further. The Baptists is now opening their very own food market like Bamsey, where you'll be able to come in and you'll be purchasing your own food. It makes me believe that these guys must have been listening to God when he told them to prepare for certain things. The Baptists, like Christendom in the Bahamas, has pushed tremendously to help the educational system. And now what you see here is the expansion because of the move that is being made, because of the Baptist representing itself as a unity. It is now going to make itself structurally more attractive for people of similar belief, those of similar goal, those of similar ilk. So it will attract revenue into their program, into their missionary effort. So I am happy. I am happy that these senior men have such a clarity of mind and such a clarity of vision to drive home such a bill at this time here, Mr. Speaker, and Pinewood is happy. But I must admonish them. They said, the Bible teaches us that when a child comes into the world, you should cry, eh? And you rejoice when somebody died. It also says the end of a matter is better than its beginning. Mr. Speaker, through you, I want to encourage them that as is, and we feel it in government, when your best intentions go forward, you must hold strong, because when you begin to break down, as they would the old headquarters, to build new, the time in between attracts a lot of ridicule. Because all people will complain about now we have to meet in the back of this building when we had a two-story, but they need to see the vision. They need to be like the pillar of fire by day and the cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night. There must be something that reminds them that we are going somewhere. Because when these men start their work, Baptist is a community of independent churches who will be making a collective decision that this we will do. That takes leadership, Mr. Speaker. So I'm proud today, and I hope that we can lend our support foursquare, not just in prayer, but in words and deeds, to encourage this initiative. As a government, we should encourage this initiative, because this makes our job easier by supporting such altruistic deeds. Finally, I would like to speak wholeheartedly to this as best I can. And I want to encourage us as an administration and all and the spirit of equality. You know, when an investor comes into our country, you know, we use the term bigwig. It would seem, this is historic. We roll out the red carpet, we listen to them, we engage them because of what they bring to the table. I want to say to the government, show the same respect to the church because they bring something to the table. But not only do they bring something to the table, everything they have on their table belongs to we. And they're sharing it among ourselves. I would like when I move around to Baptist churches that I would hear a growing crescendo of how the interaction with the community and with colleagues and everybody in government is getting better and better and better. Though I would caution them that giving advice does not mean that someone is obligated, but let's have a place where there can be dialogue and communication and mutual respect. And I pledge my support, I hope many of us pledge our support, to be more cognizant of the work of the Christian community. And I thank them, Mr. Speaker, for what they are doing. For this truly is one bill that when it is passed and the work is done, our country will be a better place and the work and the agenda of this government will be much better. So allow me, Mr. Speaker, to salute the current 10th President of the Bahamas National Baptist Missionary and Educational Convention, the Reverend Dr. Lloyd Smith, his Vice, the Reverend Dr. Philip McPhee, Stanley Ferguson, Mr. Everett Brown, Delton Fernanda, and all the executive team. And I say today that today is history, and should God tarry, our people will one day read in history and they will acknowledge the work and sacrifice that you have done. But when you leave this place, the work starts. Keep the convention together and make this happen. And as you pray for the convention, pray for the minister-led administration, because all of us rely on the one same God, the maker of heaven and earth. Mr. Speaker, Pinewood supports this bill, and Pinewood further supports the work of the Bahamas Missionary, Baptist Missionary and Educational Convention.
Thank you, Honorable Member. As many? Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Tall Pines.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I promise my members to be very, very brief. Mr. Speaker, I feel like one of those politicians that go on the pulpit and they're sent to the smaller pulpit. When you make the smaller lectern, when you make that step on the pulpit and you know that you're not supposed to be on that ground pulpit, on the pulpit. Because I've heard, Mr. Speaker, my colleagues, many of whom are reverends and preachers, and Mr. Speaker, it caused me even more to say, keep this to 5 minutes. And that I will, Mr. Speaker, but I want to say from the onset that the people of Tall Pines support this very, very historic, this very, very noble and very, very timely bill before this House. The Bahamas Baptist Missionary and Educational Convention Incorporated Bill 2018. Mr. Speaker, I'm known as an Anglican, but I want to remind all and sundry that this Don Saunders was christened. He was christened, and I see the Reverend Philip Murphy, my cousin. Yeah, he was the target all night, so I might as well just finish with him. But I was baptized in the Mount Calvary Baptist Cathedral on Blue Hill Road by his father. And Mr. Speaker, I always remember my twin brother and I running up and down in that church that we felt was a castle, huge church. And I always remember, Mr. Speaker, the Reverend Philip Murphy. We joked about the spirit of the Baptist pastor, I think the member for South Andrews, South Central Andrews, spoke about the Baptist members, pastors not getting rid of that Baptist vibe, that Baptist preaching. But I want to say to them that I remember Reverend Philip McPhee, banging and stomping, and you know that when he got in that mood, it was all about preaching, and you know the pastor was about to get started in ministry. And I want to say that I grew up in the Baptist faith, understanding the values of Christianity, understanding the importance of the church, and the importance, the role of the church in building a country, in the building the human body. Speaker, so I want to encourage the Reverend Lloyd Smith, president of that convention. I want to encourage his vice presidents, including my cousin who just walked in, Reverend Philip McPhee. I want to encourage Reverend Delton Fernandez, the president of the Bahamas Christian Council. I see my legal friend, colleague, Mr. Glendon Roll, who's now the pastor of Zion Yamakroa. I see my god brother, Reverend Delaveau from Jubilee Gardens, church there in Jubilee Gardens. I want to encourage them and their colleagues to stand strong and know that this parliament and know that these people of this great commonwealth support your mission. But Mr. Speaker, it would be remiss if I don't remind these good reverends and their congregation of the importance of this very bill. This bill, Mr. Speaker, speaks to the powers of the trustees of your convention, the powers of the trustees, and the responsibilities, Mr. Speaker, that they now have to lead this convention, this church body. And it speaks, Mr. Speaker, in section 3, of using that power, Mr. Speaker, and this is important for them to walk, if they don't remember anything, using that power, it says all real or personal property inquired under subsection 1 of this section shall be held for the use and the benefit, of the Bahamas Baptist Missionary and Educational Convention. Not the use and the benefit of Reverend Delton, not the use and the benefit of Reverend Delaveau, not to the use and the benefit of any other reverend or any other single church, but the use and the benefit of the Baptist Convention. Mr. Speaker, and it goes on, Mr. Speaker, this is very important too, in section 5, change of persons holding office of trustee not to affect property and interest. Again, Mr. Speaker, it speaks to the continuity of this convention. That simply means, as one of my colleagues mentioned, that when you die, it doesn't transfer on to your children. I don't care how many millions of dollars you might put in that structure. That is not your structure. That is the structure of the church, the convention. And I know you all understand that, but I want you to walk out of this place today knowing that as we vote for this bill, we vote for the convention. We vote for no single Baptist church. We vote for no single reverend. We vote for the Baptist Missionary and Education Convention. We want you to know that, and we want you to know that we support you. Mr. Speaker, great history have already been shared, particularly by the member for Cat Island and San Salvador. But I want to remind the Bahamian people that the Baptist family, the largest and I would argue the most powerful church body in our country, has always been a part of our community. This convention has always been important for education. And as you use this new bill, this statute in the making, be focused on not only your mission to preach the word, but you also be focused on your mission to build lives, to build families. And I'm happy that is the educational convention. So use the funds and the powers that you now have to focus, Baptist, focus on education. I would put it to you, Mr. Speaker, that there is no need for any new churches in Nassau, I believe. I put it to you that there's no need for no new churches in Nassau. I put it to you, Mr. Speaker, that there's no need for any extensions to any churches in Nassau. As far as extending them for bleachers, there is need for extension of those churches for community centers. There's need for extensions of those churches for soup kitchens. There's need for extensions of those churches for schools, for corporate societies. There's needs for extension on those churches to build family centers. There's need for those funds that would be coming from all over the world now as you become a more solid body. There's need for those monies to be spent on building the lives of your members, not building great edifices. We have too many huge churches with very little bodies in them. We have too many large churches, Mr. Speaker, even with bodies in them, but not doing the true work of what the church should be doing. That's touching lives. We have too many big edifices out there with pastors driving Mercedes and pastors driving BMWs and their members and Toyota Corollas barely making it to church. It's the truth. It hurts, but it's the truth. Mr. Speaker, use this bill. Use this opportunity, Mr. Speaker. Use this opportunity, Mr. Speaker. Use this, and I'm not saying that, Mr. Speaker, to hurt any pastor, and I hope no pastor is offended. I say this, Mr. Speaker, that the reality is that the reality hurts sometimes. The reality hurts sometimes. Use this opportunity to build your churches for the good. And so, Mr. Speaker, I say, on behalf of the people of Torrey Pines, that the Baptist Church is moving in the right direction, and that we solely, without a doubt, support this Bahamas Baptist Missionary and Educational Convention Incorporated Bill of 2018. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. As many? The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Central Grand Bahama.
Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Oh, give thanks unto the Lord, for he is good, and his mercies endure forever. That is the opening line that my father, Reverend Aaron Lewis, would use before his sermon. Oh, give thanks unto the Lord, for he is good, and his mercies endure forever. I stand here through the grace of the Almighty God and the great support of the community of Central Grand Bahama. Mr. Speaker, I beg your indulgence to allow me to briefly say hello to my students at the Sister Mary Patricia Junior High School in Freeport, Grand Bahama. I'm presently assisting to teach technical drawings to grades 7 and 8 on Monday morning. And I tell you, it is such a joy to walk into the classrooms and to share my talent with those future leaders. I was able to use my office to buy technical drawing supplies, as well as I'm presently having technical drawing desks constructed. So on Monday morning, students, when you would walk into your classrooms, you would meet brand new technical drawing desks, as well as drawing equipment, tools for learning. Mr. Speaker and colleagues, oftentimes we hear the lament of the national GPA. We are concerned. That is why I decided to do something about it. Instead of talking, go into the classroom, share your skills with these future leaders, make a difference. That is exactly what the Bahamas Baptist and Educational Society did. They realized that there was a need for education. And they did not just talk about it, they gave. And the fact that education is mentioned in the name of the convention is by no mistake. That was done deliberately in order to empower our people through education. See, Mr. Speaker, my experience in this convention differs from most. This is personal to me. So I guess I stand up here today to testify. I grew up in a very small, isolated community on the north side of Grand Bahama called Waterkey. Didn't experience full electricity and running water and television and telephone until the age of 15 when I moved to the city of Freeport. My first pastor was my great-grandfather, the Reverend Thomas Harlington Hill. He died around the age of 113, I was rumored. I don't know when he was born, but I know he died very old. His brother, Deacon Benjamin Hill, died at the age of 109. Deacon Benjamin Hill is the great-grandfather of Nehemiah Hill, formerly of Bahamian, and now leading praise and worship at Mount Tabor. His other grandson is Jay Mitchell, and we all know JF singing the beautiful star of Bethlehem. So it goes to show that the Bible says, you train the child in the way they should go, and when they are old, they will not depart from it. Their sister, Frances, she died at 105, and she's the grandmother of Cheryl Grant, a noted learned attorney in this country. All Baptists, all centenarian. So we're saying here that if you want to live to a ripe old age, it's fair to say you be a Baptist. See, Papa Thomas was very active in the Baptist Missionary and Educational Convention for well over 80 years. He was responsible for Baptist churches throughout the island of Abaco, from Grand Key in the north all the way to the south. He was responsible for all of the churches in Grand Bahama. And he visited all of those churches, sailboat, sailing from community to community, making sure that the work of the Lord continued. He was made a member of the British Empire through his efforts with the church and also through his humanitarian efforts. Now, I don't see his name anywhere in the history books of the development of the church, but I'm sure that at some point it will be noted. And I really realized how important he was in the contribution he made when Sir Lyndon Pinland and most of the cabinet showed up to his funeral. So as a little boy, that was a big deal. Seeing this, I said, my grandfather was a really important man. My father also, a Baptist minister, he died some 10 years ago. And I'm going to miss him for his short sermons. Daddy was the only Baptist preacher who could preach and have a come to Jesus moment within 20 minutes. And everyone felt the service, they felt the word, and they felt anointed. So I will miss him for those short moments, and I think I took after him by having my short presentations in Parliament. See, the church on Water Key was one of two things you had to look forward to. Either go to school or go to church. And the church was the first establishment we had on the Key. My great-grandfather and 5 shareholders, they bought the entire Key, 3 miles long, 1.5 miles wide from the Crown in 1905 for a couple of dollars. These Baptists had vision. And later on, they were able to turn a portion of the Key over to the Ministry of Education to build a school. So here it is, the Baptist Church starting schools. That is where I got my first start in education at the Water Key all-age school. And of course, there was a demand that you go to Sunday school. So again, I had Sunday school twice on Sundays, in the morning and in the afternoon. And believe it or not, through the Baptist Missionary and Educational Convention, I was able to learn to read and to comprehend. So once again, thank you, Baptist, for pouring into my life. Yes, we had those services that rocked the community. I heard Yamako spoke, well, Central Surrender spoke to it about the chanting and the noise and so forth in the church. I can tell you what, in those services, there were some things going on that was just moaning and groaning. I know the Holy Spirit understood the nature of the worship. And there was a time when they were seeking services. The only name that was called in the church was Jesus. And when the anointing started to fall, they break out into something called shouting. And they shout and they dance through all the church and they sweat and they would jump up and down. And I'll tell you, they had a release. They had a shift. And not one person would leave those churches with the burden that they would have entered. They always found a way to relieve themselves, and that was the power of God falling. I do remember Marco City, those terrifying all-year rollover services when we had the watchman call. So as far as we were concerned, at midnight, Jesus was coming. So everybody in the community was in church. Watchman, watchman, what is the hour? 15 minutes between you and your maker. You don't hear that. Watchman, watchman, what is the hour? 5 minutes until Jesus burst through the clouds of glory. And I mean, everybody on the floor kneeling down, crying, oh Lord, forgive me, heal me. There was no one anywhere in the community except in the church. And guess what? Stroke of midnight, they would sound the bell or they shoot the gun in the air. And we realized that Jesus delayed his coming. Oh Lord. They started the rushing service. They rushed around the church. They throwing the money as they went around, singing and dancing. And after that, you go home, you eat your flour cake, you drink your coffee or your tea until daybreak. Those were moments that I can testify to. And I want to say again, thank you to the Baptist Church for making that possible in my life. When I came to Nassau to attend the College of the Bahamas, my father, now University of the Bahamas, my father, who was alive at the time, put me in a taxi. And he came all the way to East and Shirley Street. I want to introduce you to Reverend Dr. Charles Clifford Smith. I see Reverend Wilton Strong over there, who's also worshiping at the church at the time. Say, I want to put you in the hands of good Baptists. You grew up in the Baptist community. You're leaving Freeport. Nassau doesn't have the best reputation. But if I put you in the hands of the Baptist church, you'll be just all right. And he did that, and I thank God again for his foresight. Went to Tuskegee University and returned back to the Bahamas and rejoined Zion until I moved to Grand Bahama. Baptists, you have given to the growth and development of this country. You examined yourself, examined the institution, and you realized that there are some opportunities. You did not just sit and talk about it. You, along with your president, Dr. Lloyd C. Smith, decided to make a move to organize, grow, and empower your organization. The strengthening of your organization will make for a stronger and a better Bahamas. There will be challenges along the way, but I want to encourage you to press on to glory land. Realize that you have somebody with you to share your heavy load. God is able. I therefore charge you to use this empowerment bill to go out into all the world and to continue to preach the gospel, continue to win souls for the kingdom, continue to do what is right and pleasing in the sight of God. If the founding members mentioned earlier today were to look up now at you or look down, they would say, it is well, it is well. You are certainly on the right path. It is well with our soul. Mr. Speaker, colleagues, we have been the beneficiary of the generosity of the Baptist Missionary and Educational Convention. It is now our time to do what we can to allow them to grow. That is exactly why we are here. And I will end this by saying what they say in the Baptist Church sometimes. The Lord just dropped something in my spirit. He just dropped something in my spirit. And in my spirit is telling me that on today, the 7th of November, 2018, this bill will pass. I therefore look to the further growth and development of this very important convention, and by extension, the Bahamas. I therefore close as I open by saying, oh, give thanks unto the Lord, for he is good, and his mercies endure forever. And let the church say, amen. Central Grand Bahama therefore support this bill.
Thank you, Honorable Member. As many? The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Seabreeze.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to wind up the debate, Mr. Speaker, on this momentous occasion as we seek to pass a bill for an act by the Bahamas Baptist Missionary and Educational Convention, Incorporated, 2018. Mr. Speaker, I noted that one of my colleagues would have indicated in here today that the end of a thing, according to the Word of God, is better than the beginning. And so, Mr. Speaker, in the presence of these great men and women of the Bahamas, Baptist Missionary and Educational Convention, I would say, Mr. Speaker, to them to judge this government by our results. As the member for Central Grand Bahama would have ended, we will leave here today having passed a bill for an act for the incorporation of the Bahamas Baptist Missionary and Educational Convention. Mr. Speaker, I am thankful to God and the people of the Bahamas, particularly those of Seabreeze, for allowing me to stand here today to echo my support for this bill. Mr. Speaker, I want to say I am grateful to the people of Seabreeze for again reposing their confidence in me. I also want to begin by extending my condolences to the family of the late Honorable Bradley Roberts, his wife in particular, his daughter Michelle that I have worked with for a while, and certainly his sister Ms. Nethersole, and also Dr. Robin Roberts and the entire family on their loss. I would also wish to extend my condolences, Mr. Speaker, to the family of the 5-year-old from Eleuthera and to my colleague and member in this place of South and Central Eleuthera on the passing of that child. And, Mr. Speaker, pray their strength in the Lord. There is a song I learned in the Baptist church, and I want to leave this with them, a few words. Father alone, we'll know all about it. Father alone, we'll understand why. Cheer up, my brother. Live in the sunshine. We'll understand it all by and by. Mr. Speaker, the matter at hand, Seabreeze stands to support the church in its endeavor to advance the work of the church, in particular the Bahamas Baptist Missionary and Educational Convention. This bill, Mr. Speaker, of 2018 seeks to empower the organization, to enhance structure, to reinforce order, and ensure rules of governance of its corporate soul. This move is consistent with the reputation of the Bahamas Baptist Church and its unions, established over so many years. Mr. Speaker, the Bahamas, the Baptist has always led the common people to uncommon places, to accomplish the unexpected, and to achieve that which was thought to be unattainable. This bill is indicative of the principles, the character, and spirit of the Baptist Church, as I know it to be. Mr. Speaker, be it resolved that this is a move in the right direction for the Bahamas Baptist Missionary and Educational Convention. Mr. Speaker, the only thing I wish to speak of historic times is the fact that the church has historically been the foundation of government. The monarch has looked to the bishops of the church, the chancery, to give advice, to guide national decisions, to be fair, and to ensure order in society. Mr. Speaker, one may ask, what does the church have to do with government? Check history. Mr. Speaker, I am a product of Reverend Dr. Charles W. Saunders. I came up in the belly of the Baptist Church. I was baptized and groomed there, Taylor Street, in the Baptist faith. The doctrine of baptism is in my blood. It is established as a sacrament of the Messianic movement through Apostle John. Being baptized by Apostle John demonstrated a recognition of one's sin, a desire for spiritual cleansing, and a commitment to follow God's law in anticipation of the Messiah's arrival. Baptism is integral to the commission of the church. Jesus said in Matthew 28:19, "Go ye therefore and teach all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Ghost." The work of this convention is to create an apparatus or conduit to make the Baptist movement more effective. And it is the role of this government to facilitate its effective functioning to the benefit of our society. And I am humbled that this is being done under the administration which I serve. Mr. Speaker, I say again, judge this government on our results. Mr. Speaker, this is the government that makes things happen, good things. The work of the Baptist Church may be seen in the fruits of, and by no means is this list exhaustive, but the Bethel Baptist Church, Transfiguration Church, Salem Union Baptist Church, St. Mark's Baptist Church, St. John's Baptist Church, First Baptist Church, New Covenant, Zion Baptist, Commonwealth Baptist Church. Mr. Speaker, and the list goes on, and I really can't say the tall pines is going to stop. The church continues and will continue. As long as we need to preach the gospel, the church will continue. Mr. Speaker, from that time to now, my foundational church, now pastored by Pastor Hugh Roll, Salem Union Baptist, had a consistent program established by Reverend Charles W. Saunders. Monday, prayer, still going on. This is what I know about the Baptist church. Wednesday, Bible study, still going on. Friday, youth meeting. Summer, vacation Bible school. Summer fest for the youth. Missionary convention. Prayer band and prayer breakfast. Missionaries in white, first Sunday. Evangelists in black. 9:45 a.m., Sunday school. 11 a.m., divine worship. Women's circle, reading of our daily bread. Women's choir, men's choir, youth choir, children's choir. The establishment of the church, and in particular the Baptist way. The church with the open door. That was the motto, and still is the motto of Salem. It is known to welcome the saved and the unsaved, the rich and the poor, the good and the bad. And on these inclusive tenets, the Baptist Church still stands. The fruits of their labor, particularly of the Baptist Convention, Mr. Speaker, my aunt and her husband all the way in Fort Worth, Texas, pastoring the Agape Christian Church, Mr. Speaker, all the way in Fort Worth, Texas, coming from the Baptist, Reverend Jonathan Hanna. Mr. Speaker, my mother, coming from Salem, now Love Worth Finding Ministries, this month to celebrate 22 years of service. Went to school, she told me, at the Jordan Prince William High School, right after Reverend Dr. Simeon Hall. My husband, Pastor Bontenkin Roll, Rhema Tabernacle Church of Faith. It is a movement, and it continues to move, and it is the living soul. Mr. Speaker, the Baptist movement has been so visionary that if by chance certain factors could not attend private school, you know what the Baptists did? They established Jordan Prince William. So all have that opportunity and that quality of Christian education. If by chance the tertiary institution was too full, what did the Baptists do? It established the Baptist Bible or Bahamas Baptist College and other educational institutions, and forming partnerships with international theological seminaries around the world to ensure church leaders were trained thoroughly in the doctrine of the Christian faith and the Baptist ideology. Mr. Speaker, I wish to commend the Honorable Prime Minister and Member for Kalani and this government for leading this charge in the tabling of this bill for an act. Mr. Speaker, but this government doesn't talk the talk, we walk the walk. These are the instruments that are coming forth. A bill for an act, just make sure it's clear, for the Bahamas Baptist Missionary and Educational Convention to be incorporated under this government, year of our Lord 2018. Mr. Speaker, these are the fruits. And Mr. Speaker, this government is to be commended. The bill, or this bill, is a demonstration of the government working hand in, I didn't say talking, I said working hand in hand with the church to advance its mission. Now, I like to put things in perspective. This here, Mr. Speaker, is a demonstration of the government, this government in particular, working hand in hand with the church to advance its mission. Mr. Speaker, my leader and honorable Prime Minister is not a man of much words, but Mr. Speaker, you're going to see action. Today, what we have here for the Bahamas Baptist Missionary and Educational Convention is action. That's the change the people voted for, and that's the change we've brought to fruition today. And this is serious business. Mr. Speaker, I truly believe that he continues to allow the Lord, I'm speaking about the member of Kalani, no, he didn't ask me to say this, but I truly believe that he continues to allow the Lord to use him. I look at the fruits of what he does, to use him. And Mr. Speaker, and I encourage the church that in return, this government only asks for your prayers and your support. Because if this government fails, the country fails. If the country fails, the people fail. If I fail, you fail. We only covet and seek your prayers and support, that we do what is right and that we make the best decisions for the people. Mr. Speaker, the Baptist is and was an organization always forward-thinking, always forward-looking, and always forward-moving. Today we are here to support another great move of the church, in particular the Bahamas Baptist Missionary and Educational Convention to be incorporated and to be recognized as a corporate soul. Mr. Speaker, I support this move and commend such a bill to enhance and advance the work of the church. I will honor, Mr. Speaker, as I descend these remarks, my first pastor, the Reverend Dr. Charles W. Sanders, and the Baptist Convention, the host of men that have worked with him over the years. With the hymnal of Mr. Albert A. Goodson, that he would have had us to sing every time we opened Salem's doors. The choir had to line up, and the youth choir had to sing as we started divine worship. We've come this far by faith, leaning on the Lord, trusting in his holy word, and he has never failed me yet. My most favorite part as I take my seat, it said, oh, that means we came through many toils and snares. Oh, but we can't turn around the Bahamas. We have come this far by faith. Mr. Speaker, on that note, this is a great move of the Bahamas Missionary and Educational, Baptist Missionary and Educational Convention. Seabreeze fully supports this bill, and we pray the continued support of the church. Seabreeze.
Thank you, Honorable Member. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read a second time and committed. A bill for an act to incorporate the Bahamas Baptist Missionary and Educational Convention in the Bahamas. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. Honorable members, I'll do that a second time. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read a second time and committed. A bill for an act to incorporate the Bahamas Baptist Missionary and Educational Convention in the Bahamas. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. Ordered that the bill be read a second time and committed.
A bill for an act to incorporate the Bahamas Baptist Missionary and Educational Convention in the Bahamas.
For the second reading of bills.
Mr. Speaker, there are no more further second readings. I do now move that the House resolves itself into a committee of the whole with the Deputy Speaker in the chair.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that this House dissolve itself into a committee of the whole House with the Chairman and Deputy Speaker in this chair. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. This House will now resolve itself into a committee of the whole House with the Chairman of the Committee of the whole House and Deputy Speaker in the chair.
Committee of the Whole. Committee of the Whole.
Mr. Chairman, I do now move that the long title of the bill for the Bahamas Baptist Missionary and Educational Convention Incorporated Bill 2018, that the long title of the bill be agreed.
Second.
It's being moved and seconded that the long title of the bill be agreed. As many members that are in favor remain seated. Those opposing will rise. The long title of the bill is agreed. One second, member. As many.
Mr. Chairman, I do now move that the short title of the bill be agreed.
Second.
It's being moved and seconded that the short title of the bill be agreed. As many members that are in favor remain seated. Those opposing will rise. The short title of the bill is agreed.
Mr. Chairman, I do move that clauses 2 through 10 of the bill be agreed.
Being moved and seconded that clause 2 through 10 of the bill be agreed. As many members in favor remain seated. Those opposing will rise. Clause 2 through 10 of the bill is agreed.
Mr. Chairman, I do now move that the bill be agreed in its entirety.
Second.
It's being moved and seconded that the bill in its entirety be agreed. As many members are in favor remain seated. Those opposing will rise. The bill in its entirety has been agreed.
Mr. Chairman, I do now move that the Speaker once again takes the chair.
Second.
Being moved and seconded that the Speaker now to take the chair. Many members that are in favor remain seated. Those opposing will rise. The Speaker will now take the chair. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to report that the Committee of the Whole has gone through the bill and has made no amendments thereto.
Honorable members, the Deputy Speaker and Chairman of the Committee of the Whole House has reported that the Committee of the Whole House has gone through the bill, having made no amendment thereto. Third reading and passing of bills.
Mr. Speaker.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, I do now move for third reading and passing of a bill for an act to incorporate the Bahamas Baptist Missionary and Educational Convention in the Bahamas.
It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read a third time and pass. A bill for an act to incorporate the Bahamas Baptist Missionary and Educational Convention in the Bahamas. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. Order that the bill be read a third time and committed. And passed.
A bill for an act to incorporate the Bahamas Baptist Missionary and Educational Convention in the Bahamas.
Order that the bill now pass and the title thereof be declared to be the Bahamas Baptist Missionary and Educational Convention Incorporated Act 2018. For the third reading of bills.
Mr. Speaker, there are no more third readings.
Consideration of Senate amendments. Resolutions.
None, Mr. Speaker.
Members' statements. The chair recognizes the honorable member for the Exumas and Ragged Island.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I will be extremely brief with 4 brief points. Firstly, I want the record to reflect my condolences to the family of Mr. Bradley Roberts, who gave of himself in every capacity in which he served his country in Parliament, his party, and as a true Bahamian. Secondly, I offer my commendations to the Baptist community on the passing of this landmark legislation for the Baptists in our country. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, this is an occasion to be celebrated, one of consensus, and despite the often political theater that we see here, often the controversy we see today, there is unanimity today, a true mark of the service that the Baptists has given our country, and this is a great moment for the Bahamas. Finally, Mr. Speaker, thirdly, Mr. Speaker, I offer birthday greetings to Mrs. Adeline Roll, and this is no ordinary occasion. She is 100 years old. Wow. And she hails from Mount Thompson, Exuma. She has born 12 children, including retired Senior Commander Amos Roll of the Royal Bahamas Defense Force, Benjamin Roll, and many others. And of course, the great-grandson, Mr. Glendon Roll, the former PLP candidate for Long Island, now the Reverend Glendon Roll, is a great-grandson of Mrs. Adeline Roll. And finally, Mr. Speaker, on a not happy note, the residents of Exuma and Ragged Island, as the residents of the people across the country, have grave concern with respect to their electricity bills, and they've asked me to raise this as an issue of great importance. Indeed, we know that 50%, up to 50% of Bahamians have barely been making ends meet, and therefore they have invited me to urge the government to find a solution to this vexing issue, and therefore I express this concern on behalf of the people of Exuma and Ragged Island, and of course the people of the Bahamas generally. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, honorable member. Further member statement. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Fox Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I did not speak on this bill. There are so many reverends in this place, and we thought they ought to have the opportunity to let their colleagues know how they feel about it. But I cannot let this opportunity pass without adding my congratulations to the Baptists and to thank them for the tireless work they do in this country. I am from a little old church called the Methodist. And but being from a constituency like Foxville, it is quite easy to forget, and I think Reverend McPhee was in Macedonia in St. Mark's Church when I spoke to this. When you are from a constituency like Foxville, you have about 19 churches around there. Most of them are Baptist. And so we have St. Paul's. I think Bishop Raming was here this morning. We had Reverend, oh, there he is. He's called the mayor of Foxville. And then we had Pastor Sabrina Pinder, St. Mark's Native Baptist Church. And then, of course, we have Macedonia Baptist Church. And so Foxville. And then we also had in there, I got it, Reverend, I got it. We have on Prince Charles, Rehoboth. And in that Baptist church, the pastor is the last living contributor to our national symbol, Reverend Dr. Philip Raming. And the lighthouse, the beacon on the hill, Reverend McPhee, Mount Carey Union Baptist Church. And you know what? You've shown us an example where you have the Zion, you have Mount Carey Union, you have the Native Baptist. And you all can come together. All can come together to do this one thing. So that tells us that this country can come together to do whatever we need to do to move this country forward. And Reverend McPhee, as I take my seat, I will remind you of something you said when I was in St. Mark's Church. He said, you can't do it without the Baptists. He said, we outnumber all of them. So, colleagues, you've done a good thing today. We have done a good thing today. And so I join Seabreeze in asking the Baptists to always remember this government as well as the opposition in your prayers. May God bless you.
Thank you, honorable members. The members of Her Majesty's official opposition wishes for me to convey to you that they had to leave at this time because there's a 6:30 memorial service being held for the late Bradley Roberts. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Central and South Eleuthera.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you for this opportunity this afternoon. And I'd like to congratulate all of the leaders from our Baptist ministry here in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. On the 7th of November 2018, your prayer has been answered. Go forth and continue with the word of God. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to offer my condolences to the community of Green Castle and my constituency. Mr. Speaker, on the 5th of November, that community was awakened by a tragedy that took place, and little John Dorset, lost his life at the age of 5 years old.
Honorable members.
And Mr. Speaker, I'd like to also send my condolences out to the family of Mario Rule from Green Castle. So we lost a little boy on Monday night and Mario on Tuesday. So that community is in grief. Mr. Speaker, there's another lady in my constituency who
who has played a major role in the development and the growth of many of our young people over the years. She was a member of the Windermere High School staff most of all of her adult life. And no matter what role she played, Miss Una Clark would be remembered in the lives and the hearts and the minds of many of us from the island of Eleuthera for many, many years. I think, Brother One, you were there when she was there, huh? Miss Clark? Yes, you were there. She will be laid to rest, all goes well, this Saturday. Mr. Speaker, thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. For the member statements, the chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Bain and Grantstown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for acknowledging me. I just wanted to stand. I did not give a presentation today. I wanted some of the more ordained individuals inside this Parliament to offer their words of encouragement, and certainly I wanted to be here to make sure that the record reflects that I stand in support of such a resolution and a bill being brought to this Honorable House of Assembly. So I just wanted to stand to congratulate the Baptist community. As a young man, having grown up and being in Grantstown, I'm too a product of the Baptist community, and nothing like the sweet old songs of the Baptist church. Just growing up in Bethel Baptist Church around Reverend Dr. Timothy Stewart, who continues to be a pillar in our community, as well as the St. John's Native Baptist Church, just minutes away from each other. And so the Baptist community has certainly been a staple in our country, in our society for years, and I could not agree to a more fitting resolution to be able to continue to support the work that they have done and continue to do within our community and the wider society. And so with that, the people of Bain and Grantstown congratulate the Baptist community, and we look forward to many years to come of their great impact to our society. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Golden Isles.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I should just like to convey sincere condolences to the family of the late Lorraine Turnquest of Boatswain East. She'll be laid to rest this Saturday at St. Ambrose Anglican Church, and that's at the corner of Carmichael and Gladstone Road. I pray that they be comforted and strengthened during this difficult and most challenging time. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Tall Pines.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just wanted to rise quickly to give Tall Pines condolences also on behalf of Tall Pines to the Honorable Bradley Roberts' death, and to say to their family that we'll be praying for them. Speaker, I also wish to quickly advise the members of Tall Pines, particularly the Victoria Gardens and High Point Estate community, that we will be having a meet and greet on Saturday, this Saturday. Speaker, on the last occasion I'd indicated that we were in the process of building 2 new parks in Tall Pines, which we have completed. The new park in Victoria Gardens and the new park in Straughns Hill subdivision. So we're proud to have those parks completed, and we want to meet with those residents at Victoria Gardens and High Point subdivision on this Saturday between the hours of 12 and 2 p.m. 12 and 2 p.m. And I also want to encourage them to come with their concerns because they have been raising issues about still the dump issue. So I encourage the government to move on that matter as soon as possible. But we will be able to discuss that matters and other matters important to the community. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I just wish to thank my god brother. I think I referred to him as Delaveau, which I should have said Reverend Duncombe from the Baptist Church in Jubilee Gardens. So any person in that community, please relay my apologies to Reverend Duncombe, and to say again to the Baptist community, congratulations on the passing of this bill.
Thank you. For the member statement, the chair recognizes the Honorable Member for North Eleuthera.
Mr. Speaker, I stand here tonight to inform the people of North Eleuthera of the visit of the Prime Minister who will be in our district coming this Friday. We will be having a meeting in Spanish Wells at 4 p.m. at the school in Spanish Wells. We will also have a meeting later that evening at 7 p.m. at the North Luther All-Age School in the Bulb. Transportation will be provided for those individuals wishing to attend those meetings. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Further member statements? The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, I do rise at this point in time to express my sincere condolences to the family of Bradley Roberts, who has passed. Mr. Speaker, I rise to do such because Mr. Roberts and my father happen to have been very good friends, though they did part company on my joining the Free National Movement. But, Mr. Speaker, whether you love him or loathe him, there is no doubt that Bradley Roberts, as a political figure in this country, his shadow loomed very large over the past 20 years. And so I would like to offer my sincere condolences to his wife and their children. And Mr. Speaker, may he rest in peace and rise in glory.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Further member statement. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for South Beach.
Honorable Speaker, the late Honorable Bradley Roberts is a member of our faith community at St. Francis Xavier Cathedral, where this coming Friday is celebration of life as a funeral mass will be held at 11 o'clock. And of course, I will be there. Mr. Roberts and his family, I'm talking about his siblings and his wife and children, have been lifelong members of the Catholic Church and faith and lifelong members of St. Francis Church. I have been a member of the Catholic faith for over 50 years, a member specifically of St. Francis over 45 years, and I was at one point, Mr. Speaker, in 2000 ordained as a permanent deacon in the Catholic Church. One of my indefatigable supporters and faithful, committed encouragers, I use it, was the Honorable Bradley Roberts. He was, despite what people would describe him to be, was a man of boundless generosity. I can prove that, sir. During my darker hours, as firstly a member of that community, and at times in my ministry as a deacon, Mr. Roberts was a sure and unqualified supporter of me in very particular philosophical and material ways. He was obviously one who would let you know his mind, but he would do it with me in ways of great charity and respect. In fact, he occupied a space in the church from which he never deviated to the left, southwest seat, and he was always always willing to offer a word of encouragement, particularly when he felt that I was not as liturgically correct as he thought, because you remember Mr. Roberts comes from that old school Catholic church. And so my, as it were, kind of Pentecostal-like preaching wasn't too resonant with some of the more conservative elements of the Catholic faith. They came around. I did not, revert to the more traditional. So I want to extend to his family and his sisters, wife. I had the great privilege of teaching Mr. Roberts' children while I was a teacher at St. Augustine's. He was a fierce supporter, very ever-present father, parent in his children's life. And my heart goes out to his life. I thank him, celebrate his life, and I give my condolences and best wishes to his family.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Garden Hills.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to congratulate one of my colleagues, Mr. Shannon Cartwright, who has put together a wonderful plan about the whole Edmund Moxie and the Coconut Grove connection. And Mr. Speaker,
That's appropriate.
Mr. Speaker, it's a wonderful demonstration, I believe, Mr. Speaker, of what we should all be doing in our communities, identifying and trying to revive the spirit and life of the persons who have contributed to our areas. Mr. Moxie was a man beyond Coconut Grove, and I commend you, Mr. Cartwright, and all of your team for what you're doing. Speaker, I also want to extend condolences to the family of Mr. Bradley Roberts, who's a fierce member of the PLP. We must always admit that, Mr. Speaker. But he's lived his life. He's done what he had to do. And we say to his family, as he rests in peace, his works will be remembered. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank all of my colleagues and the hundreds of, perhaps thousands of public officers who this week, who last week and this week were celebrating the National Public Service Officer of the Year. Mr. Speaker, I was totally amazed on Sunday when I went to Paradise Island, and I heard my staff telling me before we went to Paradise Island, "Oh, Mr. Roll, we ran out of tickets." And I was saying to myself, you ran out of tickets, you sold 350 tickets, so, you know, that's a big thing. And when they told me that they sold 850 tickets for the National Public Service Person of the Year, I was so amazed, Mr. Speaker. We had to turn people down in celebration of what is transpiring in the public service. So I want to thank all of my colleagues and their ministries for a wonderful and outstanding celebration, a week of celebrations. And I say to the hard workers in Grand Bahama, we will be there on Friday to culminate this event. And I say to all of my colleagues next year, as we celebrate this event, get your tickets early, because your staff will go out there and do their best to show how much they love this ministry and how much they love what we do. So I want to say thank you to the 22,000 members of the public service who took last week to show their wares and to demonstrate to the Bahamian people that they are totally committed to service and they are totally committed to delivering on their behalf. I say thank you, public officers.
Thank you. Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Marco City.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. In keeping with the communication by the Minister with Responsibility for the Public Service, I'd like to, on behalf of the entire staff of the Ministry of Agriculture and Marine Resources, congratulate Dr. Lester Gittins, who was in fact selected as the Public Service Officer of the Year 2018-2019. I'd also like to extend condolences to the family of Senaida Dorset. She was an outstanding community worker. She was a committed member of our organization. She spoke her mind, and she let the chips fall where they may. And so I can extend condolences to her entire family. Mr. Speaker, while I'm unable to share some of the comments of my colleagues, I would nevertheless, as a former chairman of the Free National Movement and someone who was in constant sparring with, sparring is really an understatement, Mr. Speaker, with the Honorable Bradley Roberts, I would like to extend condolences to his family. His brother, Robin, has been unusually kind, not just to me, but to thousands of Bahamians. And the irony of politics in the Bahamas is, as many persons in here would be aware, Mr. Roberts has a sister that is near and dear to so many of us in here and is an active member of our organization. And so I always try to keep in mind that we ought to be careful in how we deal with each other because we are so close as a country. And I would only say, Mr. Speaker, when I learned of Mr. Roberts' death, the first thing that occurred to me was how much time we spend away from our family and loved ones attempting to make a contribution to this country. And you know, in politics, you are as good as your last good deed. You can help people consistently, and the one moment you're unable to at the level that is desired. And so this has to be a work as if unto God, not looking for anything in return. Because if you're calculating down the road that'll be returned, chances are you're going to get your feelings hurt. And so you have to do it as if unto God. And I thought about that when I heard of his passing because I absolutely love this country. But I do know that there's a need among public servants to have greater balance for all of us in our life so that we are able to spend some quality time with family, suck some joy out of this life every single day. That was the first thing that occurred to me. The second thing is some of the venom that we have in us for folks, it is unhealthy for us ourselves. And so I often think, particularly when I go to funerals, it's the most sobering period for me, and it's a point of rededication. If I go to a funeral every day, anything that's not right in my life, I get it right while I'm sitting there, because most of the stuff that we are sweating, it's irrelevant. You know, they say don't sweat the small stuff, and then the second thing they say, everything is small stuff. When I'm in a funeral and I'm considering that this person is gone, I realize that many of the things that I'm focused on are really not that important. That's why I'm able to, in this arena, even with persons on my side, to smile with folks that truly you are sometimes tempted to slap into the middle of next week. You are able to tolerate them, Mr. Speaker, because you realize we are all just made of clay and are fragile and life is fleeting. But the final thing I'll say, Mr. Speaker, is when you think of somebody who has been as fearless, ferocious as Bradley Roberts, there are persons who would be quick to celebrate even his passing. And I would only say this to folks, as I've said to my own self, that every time we go to a funeral of somebody that's been amazing, who when in their departure has left a hole in so many lives, the first thing you think is, my God, I have a short list of people I could quickly substitute for that person in the coffin. And I myself have had a short list of persons I would rather substitute for some of the relatives I've had who have died over the years. And then the Holy Spirit reminds me that in much the same way I have a short list of people I would prefer to be in the coffin, I happen to be on a number of other people's short lists. And so I would only say, Mr. Speaker, that, you know, it's a small country, and I encourage people, let's try to find a way, as difficult as it is. Our people hard to love some days. Let's find a way to turn to each other instead of on each other.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for St. Barnabas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, firstly, let me just offer my sincere, my humble thanks to my colleague from Garden Hills for his sentiments. But Mr. Speaker, I've always said on this journey, it's not about me, and I am mindful that each of us all of my colleagues here are doing their best to weave their contribution into the national fabric, just as I am. But I'm indeed very grateful for the sentiments offered by my colleague from Garden Hills. While I'm on my feet, Mr. Speaker, I do wish to offer my condolences to the family of Zenaida Dorset. As was stated by the member from Marco City, she has been a rock and a long-time supporter of the Free National Movement. She has been a personal aid to me in many ways, and I pray that Almighty God brings solace to her family during this difficult time. Additionally, I wish to offer my condolences to the family of Mr. Bradley Roberts. Also, as the member from Marco City would have just expressed, oftentimes we get caught up in the jostling and the back and forth, the understandable jostling at times in politics, but particularly in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, where we are all linked. It should be a reminder to us about our humanity and really what is important at the end of the day. Mrs. Roberts is the first cousin of my paternal grandmother. In fact, the story goes that my paternal grandmother introduced her first cousin to Mr. Roberts. So I've always known Mr. Roberts and have been linked through my paternal grandmother. So it is so important that in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas that we take these moments just to step back and to fully appreciate some of the more profound and more important things and the things that will truly endure. So I offer my condolences to his family, and may his soul rest in peace. Thank you.
Thank you, honorable members. Honorable members, we have, the time has expired for member statement. So moving on with the order of business, appointments of select committees, instructions to select committees, discharge of select committees, notices for future meetings.
Mr. Speaker, I do renew all matters in the name of the government. The opposition is not here, so I can't renew their matters, but I do renew all matters in the name of the government and signal, Mr. Speaker, that we will return to the House on at 10 a.m. Wednesday, the 21st of November, 2018.
Are you moving an agenda?
Yes, I do move, Mr. Speaker.
Yes. Is there a second? It has been moved and seconded that this House do adjourn to 10 a.m. Wednesday, 21st of November, 2018. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. Final adjournment.
Mr. Speaker, I do now move that the House adjourns.
It has been moved and seconded that this House adjourns to 10 a.m. Wednesday, the 21st of November, 2018. As many as in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. This House stands adjourned to 10 a.m. Wednesday, the 21st of November, 2018.
All right.